Chapter 751. When the light dissipated, the stone castle was finally built. Level 11 Lord's Stone Castle. Upgrade requirements: tough wood 35,000, stone bricks 28,000, fine stone bricks 8,200, lithostone flooring 1,500, iron 3,000, cast iron block 1,500, metal parts 1,800, tiles 5,500. The upgrading conditions were still met. After all, he had accumulated materials for nearly 2 months, and production from the undead skeletons went uninterrupted. The number of materials was enough for him to complete another upgrade. To elevate the level to 12. At this moment, he was confident that even if every transmigrator has their own advantage, no one could surpass level 12. His skeletons were involved in uninterrupted production and processing 24 hours a day. Even the most ruthless of capitalists couldn't surpass him. He doubted anyone could beat his collection and production speed. Furthermore, his territory included the Bloody Mountain Range and Frostwind Mountain Range, 2 large stone mining and iron mining areas. Others simply couldn't compare. Light once again enveloped the manor, this time the upgrade process taking 1.5 hours. Not wishing to wait aimlessly, he headed to the Blackstone training grounds to observe the maids' training. From afar, he heard the smack-smack sounds of effort. And maids' cries with sobs in their voices. Due to the blockage from the structures, Fang Hao quickened his steps. He poked his head around a building. He saw 3 maids, bent over a stone bench, bottoms in the air. Meanwhile, Angia wielded a tree branch, menacingly striking their behinds. The girls yelped in pain with each strike, their bodies trembling. "If you steal food from the back again, I'll paddle your bottoms raw, and then I'll tell Fang Hao, let him kick you out," warned Angia. The girls only cried out a few times. However, upon hearing that Fang Hao might expel them, their faces turned as white as a sheet. "Angia, please don't tell our master, didn't I play with you before? Please don't tell him," one begged. Angia merely intended to frighten them but remained stern. "Train hard then and I won't report you. If Aseti finds out and reports you, as long as you've been training, you'll be safe." "All right, we understand. We'll train hard," the maids sobbed in agreement. "Good, get going then." The 3 immediately rose and joined the other maids in training. Angia also returned to the training ground, leading the maids as they practiced their boxing. With each punch thrown, a breath was exhaled, however, their spirits weren't in it. A few muscular earth spirit ladies stood to the side, commenting and pointing from time to time. They would shake their heads disdainfully at the maids' showy, pretentious kicks and punches. Fang Hao took in the scene from afar, deciding not to go over to them. Instead, he made detour to check on the skeleton tailors, skeleton goldsmiths and other craftsmen, and greet them in passing. By the time he completed his lengthy detour and returned to the manor, the upgrade was complete. The Lord's Stone Castle had advanced to level 12. Level 12 Lord's Stone Castle. Lord Owner, Fang Hao. Ability, Production/Scavenging plus 6%, Troop Movement plus 6%, all attributes plus 7%. Existing buildings, Level 10 Underground Cemetery, Level 10 Stable. Appointed positions, Bronze Bowl City Taloak, Frostwind City Skull Crusher, Town North Blackthorn, Pruel Tavak, Blood Castle Rolina and Tobias, Webweaver Camp Dominica, Unnamed Zhongbin, Unnamed Fulei, Unnamed Dongjiayu, Unnamed Kongyang. Note: Core Territory Building. Upgrade materials required: tough wood 40,000, stone bricks 32,000, fine stone bricks 8,800, lithostone ground 2,000, iron 3,500, cast iron block 2,000, metal parts 2,200, tiles 5,000. Post reaching level 12. The size of the Lord's residence received another increase. Fang Hao and his fellow men could completely fill up 3 rooms. The residence gets a bit empty as the heroes have their own homes and chose not to live in the Lord's residence. Along with a greater size, the Lord's manor gained new abilities. Increases were noted in scavenging, troop movement, and all properties. All in all, pretty satisfactory. Once everything was done, Fang Hao headed to the stable, mounted a giant lizard, and rode to the glass production area outside of the city. The Lord's residence, including the Lord's estate and the maids' quarters, were already reinforced with glass. However, the other subordinate cities were yet to receive such an upgrade. Fang Hao was reminded by fellow city owners in their chat that winter was swiftly approaching, and all residences ought to have glass for protection against the elements for the comfort of the citizens. He made straight for the glass factory. The skeleton laborers there were already hard at work. When they saw Fang Hao approaching, they continued their activity without any pause. It was as though he was not there at all. Fang Hao glanced at the smoothly operating glass factory. He then turned his attention to the warehouse hastily erected nearby. The warehouse was simple, a straw shack and wooden stakes assembled to house batches of ware. At this point, however, 5 warehouses were already stacked full of glass panes and all sorts of glassware like bottles and casings. Since they had not been attended to in a while, and it had recently been raining, everything inside the warehouse was mudded, as if it had been dug up from a muddy ditch. Even the wares placed on the top were covered in mud spots. Fang Hao briefly scanned the premise. Then, he dropped a line in the territory chat: Zhang Bin, Dong Jiayu, Fu Lei, Su Yang, Lan Yang, Li Rong, each of you gets 4 panes of glass. If anyone else wants them, each glass panel is 2 warfire coins. Reselling inside this channel is prohibited. Chapter 752. The number of members in the territory channel now far exceeded that of the past. Many more transmigrators joined the territory through connections they had made with others. The numbers have soared drastically. The ones that Fang Hao had specifically mentioned were all personally recruited by him. They each played different roles in the development of the territory. Upon hearing Fang Hao's offer, the territory chat room, which had been quiet before, erupted instantly with activity. Zhang Bin said, "Thank you, boss. You are mighty." Fu Lei said, "Thanks, boss. You are mighty." Lan Yang chimed in, "Thanks, boss. You're mighty. By the way, what exactly is a glass panel? Is it the glass on the window?" Zhang Bin replied, "Yes, if you have a glass panel, you can directly put it in when making windows. If you don't, you'll only have a wooden frame, and the middle would be empty." Lan Yang exclaimed, "Wow! That's great! It's so cold these days. I was thinking about using beast skins to cover the windows, but now I don't need to do that anymore." Chu Yu exclaimed, "I am so jealous. I want to buy glass panels to make windows." Zhu Yi followed, "I want to buy some too, boss Fang Hao, where can I get it?" In truth, the price that Fang Hao set at 2 warfire coins is basically a giveaway. Anyone who managed to survive thus far would have enough from opening a single chest to fill the entire Lord's mansion with windows. This was why he made an announcement that these items couldn't be resold on the territory channel. Otherwise, there would definitely be people who would exploit this by buying at a low price from him and selling it on the territory channel at a higher price. This simple business idea was something a lot of people could come up with. Fang Hao responded, "Anyone who wants to buy can message me, but the quantity is limited. Each person can't buy more than 8 pieces for now. Once we increase our production in future, I'll gradually supply more to everyone." Zhu Yi said, "Okay, boss Fang Hao, I want 8. I also want 8. One after another, private messages came flooding in. After Fang Hao confirmed, he put up their designated glass panels for sale one by one. Everyone else swiftly accepted them and started installing them in their own houses. 8 pieces of glass panel wouldn't solve everyone's problems in their territory. To let their troops and residents all have windows, the consumption would be tremendous. With the current production speed, this was highly unlikely. So, they can only seal their windows with beast skin and gradually increase the number next year. Elsewhere. Inside a tent made of stitched together beast skin on 8 Peaks Mountain. Dong Jiayu removed her helmet, shaking her sweat-drenched hair. Today, they had conquered the last 2 of the 12 fortresses on 8 Peaks Mountain. The dwarfs put up even more stubborn resistance. The cannons on both sides spewed flames, as the smoke, which seemed to be dyed with gunpowder, covered the battlefield. The ground was constantly trembling. This moment felt as if they had transitioned from the cold weapon era to the firearm era. Individuals seemed weak and powerless. Outside the tent, a group of hero commanders also entered it. Dong Jiayu spread the map out on the wooden table. In a low voice, she said, "Tonight, we siege." Her fingers gently pointed to the positions of the 2 fortresses on the map. Belarga, the dwarf, frowned, his thick beard swinging as he anxiously asked, "So soon? Our troops just fought with them the whole day today, are we going to siege the city tonight too?" Dong Jiayu stated firmly, "Yes, our troops are undead and they neither tire nor fear death. The ones who fear exhaustion are them. We will attack tonight, and we won't let them have a chance to eat." The other heroes didn't comment. They were undead heroes, and naturally, they didn't care when to wage a siege. They just needed to ensure their own safety. Right now, the firepower of the dwarves' machines was growing increasingly fierce. Undead Red Dragon hero Spencer felt this most acutely when leading the bone dragons in aerial attacks. The projectiles shot from the ground were as dense as raindrops. To launch a breath attack on the ground, they had to endure the rain of arrows as they swooped down. When they returned, both Spencer and the bone dragons were heavily injured. So, Dong Jiaoyu promptly changed her strategy from blitzing to a war of attrition. Since her side didn't need rest, they could continuously attack, day by day, believing that their adversaries also needed rest. Belarga stroked his beard but didn't say anything further. Meat Fist then asked, "Are we going to attack both fortresses at once, or just one?" Dong Jiaoyu said directly, "Meat Fist, you will lead 1,000,000 troops to attack this fortress. Black Sword will distract the other fortress. Spencer will lead the bone dragons to harass and attack when the time is right. Belarga, you will lead the dwarves to repair all the machines to ensure they work properly." "Good. Got it." All the heroes nodded, and once again left the tent. Less than half an hour later, the undead army launched another attack, with the sound of cannon fire everywhere and the ground trembling with each blast. Dong Jiaoyu was sitting inside the tent. She ate the meat pies and grilled fish that had been exchanged over the channel. The plates and cups on the table trembled with each boom of the cannons. At this moment, the tent flap was pulled open. Her subordinate, City Lord Yang Xiaolan peeked in. Upon seeing Dong Jiaoyu in the tent, she entered with a smile. "Sister Jiaoyu, have you checked the territory channel?" Yang Xiaolan sat down next to her. "Nope, what happened? Did Lan Yang put on another stellar performance?" Dong Jiaoyu kept eating while talking. "No, it's Brother Hao. He's selling glass panels in the channel. There's one for you too, and everyone gets 4 each. If others want to buy, it's 2 warfire coins each." Yang Xiaolan explained. "Really?" Dong Jiaoyu immediately opened the Book of Lords to check. Indeed, she saw Fang Hao's message in the channel, and he had sent her 4 panels which she could trade anytime. At this time, the weather was getting colder, and these glass panels were beneficial. "Did you guys buy any?" Dong Jiaoyu looked at Yang Xiaolan. Yang Xiaolan shook her head, "Not yet. Even if we buy them now, we can't carry them around. And everybody else is busy making equipment for the soldiers, they don't even know about it." She paused before continuing, "I'm afraid they'll be bought by others later. Sister Jiaoyu, since you're close to Brother Hao, ask him to save some for us. We'll buy them when we get back." Dong Jiaoyu thought about it and agreed. Yang Xiaolan and the others were her transmigrators, and she needed to secure good items for her own people. She didn't want others, like Zhang Bin's people, buying them all leaving her own people to freeze in the winter. "All right, I'll talk to Brother Hao. After all, we are all making efforts for the development of the territory. It wouldn't be fair if he didn't give us any." Dong Jiaoyu bit into her pie with even more gusto. "Exactly." Dong Jiaoyu immediately opened the Book of Lords to contact Fang Hao. First, she reported on the situation at 8 Peaks Mountain, then requested ammunition in a large amount of fuse. Lastly, she brought up the issue of the glass panels. Fang Hao naturally left some for them. There was plenty in the warehouse, so there was no issue about saving any. Yang Xiaolan, who was waiting by the side, saw Dong Jiaoyu close the Book of Lords. She quickly asked, "What did Brother Hao say?" Dong Jiaoyu confidently replied, "It's settled. Not only did he preserve some for us, but he also allowed each of us to receive 2 extra glass panels." "Yay, Sister Jiaoyu, you are so influential." "Of course." In a blink of an eye, 3 days passed. After breakfast, Fang Hao brought Aseti and Angia through the portal directly to Tasco Orc City. He had a chat with Bronze Bull about recent events. When Bronze Bull found out that Fang Hao was planning to cultivate personnel who could handle accounting, he insisted on including some young Taurens. Fang Hao was slightly stunned. Whether male or female, all members of the Tauren clan were powerfully built with shimmering red muscles from head to toe. Also, they seemed better suited to developments in strength rather than learning. However, with Bronze Bull being so proactive, Fang Hao wasn't to refuse and thought having 2 Tauren partake in learning wouldn't be a big deal. "All right, select 2 smart ones to come and study with me, and we'll see how it goes." Fang Hao nodded in agreement. "Very well, our clan's children have been very bright in recent years, they are not much inferior to your human traders. Bronze Bull slapped the chair and exclaimed excitedly. Just then, a Tauren guard quickly approached from outside the door. After glancing at the excited clan leader, he reported, Lord, clan leader, the Sawtooth slave trader group is here. Bronze Bull's gaze immediately shifted to Fang Hao. He knew that Fang Hao was here today because of the slave traders. Otherwise, he wouldn't have allowed slaver traders to cross the Tasco boundary. Find them a secluded place. Fang Hao ordered. Bronze Bull thought for a moment, then said, don't let them into the city. Send them to the temporary camp on the west side of the city, bring more people, and don't let them cause trouble. Yes, clan leader. The Tauren guard nodded and backed away. Fang Hao and Bronze Bull also stood up and proceeded to walk out the door. Chapter 753. Soon enough, Fang Hao's entourage, carrying carts of newly manufactured weapons and armor, arrived at the agreed temporary campsite. Outside the campsite was a low wall made of stone and mud. Beyond the wall were several wooden buildings and many orcs. Numerous fully armored Taurens surrounding the area were coldly watching the slave traders. When Fang Hao and the others appeared on the horse cart, they saw a well-dressed orc with gold chains and rings rush over from a distance. He kept babbling as he came closer. Honored noble friend, you've finally arrived. You have no idea, the great difficulties we underwent to find enough slaves to fulfill your request. Fang Hao had some trouble distinguishing between his Orcish kind. Apart from some unique features, they all looked quite similar. However, listening to the tone and way he spoke, he could confirm the identity of the orc in front of him. He was the slave trader he'd been working with all this time. It seemed his status within the tribe had improved. He was now dressed more like a nouveau riche. He hopped off and ran to the side of the horse cart, holding onto it as he jogged while continuing his complaints. Nothing more than attempts to assure that he'd exerted every effort possible for this transaction. Upon reaching the entrance of the campsite, Fang Hao hopped off the cart and spoke, take me to see these people you've found. If I'm not satisfied, I won't pay you. The orc trader immediately slapped his chest, I guarantee you'll be satisfied, my friend. This way, please. After saying this, he led Fang Hao into the campsite. Upon entering the campsite and passing through several dilapidated wooden huts, he saw them the slaves. There were at least nearly 1,000 people gathered, among which he could see the rabbitmen and the foxmen. They were of all ages, predominantly young. The slaves were gathered here without any iron cages or restraints, waiting anxiously. Were they all captured by you? Fang Hao asked as he walked. The slave trader immediately shook his head, no, our chieftain has recently started to reform our practices, we no longer capture slaves. Otherwise, they wouldn't be so well behaved here. Reform? Hearing these words from a slave trader was quite surprising. Of course, Fang Hao wasn't particularly concerned. The tribes in the Orc region were always in chaos. By winter, hardly anyone stored food. Instead, they hoarded weapons. How would you change such a lifestyle? What practices have you changed? Fang Hao inquired. Oh, my friend, although you're very smart, powerful, handsome, and rich, I'm sure you wouldn't have thought of this. The slave trader started to brag before continuing, the living conditions on the orc side are poor, while humans live a stable life. However, slave trade is prohibited there. So, we plan to open a route. What route? To help the orcs in need find kind humans willing to accept them. Hey? Fang Hao was momentarily taken aback, trying to understand what he meant by it. Then, he suddenly understood. Was this just a new way to phrase it? He could take money from both sides since he had ways for human nobles in need of slaves to buy them. While on the orc side, he also collected money for his help in forging relationships. Did a transmigrator come up with this idea? The slave trader appeared startled, his gaze wavering. No, we thought of it ourselves. Fang Hao didn't pursue this further and continued, is this method effective? I don't think you would earn as much as when you captured slaves, right? Hehe. We certainly still capture slaves, but we only sell them to orcs. As for the humans, we do as just explained. The method isn't too bad. These are all those we've negotiated with. The slave trader gestured towards the group of slaves. All of them? They entrusted you to sell themselves to human cities. Yes, the winter is coming. You have no idea how terrifying winter is here. They wouldn't survive the winter by themselves, the slave trader explained quickly. Fang Hao chose not to say anything more. Perhaps, it really was easier for them to survive if they left the Orc region. Have you tallied the numbers and ages yet? Fang Hao asked. Tallied. The slave trader pulled out a wooden plank with numbers carved into it. The rabbitmen 327 in total, with 158 female and 168 male. The foxmen 472 in total, with 365 female and 107 male. Fang Hao shook his head and turned to Aseti, recount these people. Separate the elderly and children. Yes, sir. The slave trader paused, what are you? Do you think anyone would buy elderly or children? So, what do you mean? The slave trader appeared uncertain. Fang Hao continued, either you take them back, or you give them to me for free. If I can use them, I'll keep them. If not, I'll take care of it. He knew these slaves couldn't be taken back by the trader. Moreover, he was right. No one would want to buy the elderly or children. Raising children would involve high initial costs as they could only work once grown up. Let's proceed as you say. Take the elderly and children. If you find them useful, keep them. The slave trader said with a smile. Shortly, the numbers were recalculated. There were 42 elderly and 135 children. As they finished the count, the slave trader's face showed a special expression, my good friend, knowing your strong demand, aside from the rabbitmen and foxmen, we've specially prepared additional goods for you. Chapter 754. Fang Hao thought for a moment, it should be the deerman that the previous slave master had mentioned. He was also curious, wondering what a deer person looked like. Where is it? Let me see. Over here, sir. Follow me. The slave trader smiled slyly. They walked a few steps and stopped in front of a wooden hut. The slave trader deliberately raised an eyebrow at Fang Hao and then opened the wooden door. Inside the hut, there were 5 deermen resting on the ground. Their appearance was noticeably different from that of the rabbit people and fox people. Their upper bodies were human, with delicate facial features and sharp deer ears, with a pair of antlers on their heads. But their lower bodies were those of a deer, clothed in old flax fabric with 4 slender deer legs. Their overall image was more like what was often discussed in the channel, known as centaur women. Alright, they should be called deerman women now. What are you going to do? A petite and delicate-looking deerman girl asked timidly. Her body involuntarily shrank back. These did not come voluntarily, did they? Fang Hao looked at the slave trader. Contrary to his previous story of tribes changing occupations, the slave trader glared at the deer person, then continued smiling and said, it's fine, all of these people have signed the slave contract, there won't be any danger. Aren't you changing your profession? These deerman tribes were attacked, we bought them from the victorious tribe. If not for your needs, they would still be burdened with heavy physical labor until they die of exhaustion or starvation. The slave trader's voice was loud. While explaining to Fang Hao, they also made sure these deermen understood their current situation. If Fang Hao didn't want them, their fate back at home would be even worse. Sure enough, after hearing the slave trader's words, the deermen lowered their heads, one by one, and stopped talking. The slave trader continued, initially, there were more deermen. However, when we arrived, they had already been executed by the orcs. There are only a few left. No wonder the previous slave master had mentioned deer people, elders, and children. It appears that when they arrived, they had already been killed. Price remains the same, right? Unchanged. All right, I'll take these. Fang Hao nodded. Thank you for your generosity, wealthy friend. Now I'll go get the contract for you. If you want to experience the taste of a deerman during this time, I recommend that one. She's the daughter of the deerman tribal leader and has a high status among the deermen. The slave trader pointed to the deerman girl who had spoken earlier. The girl's body shuddered, she pressed her lips together but remained silent. Go get the contract. All right. The slave trader walked out of the wooden hut. Fang Hao followed him out as well. After receiving the contract for the deermen, Fang Hao paid the equivalent price in weapons and equipment to the slave traders. Once the exchange was completed, the smile on the slave trader's face grew even brighter. Esteemed friend, if there are new slaves in the future, may we contact you? Yes, but I hope it's their choice. All right, you truly are a kind person." After saying this, the slave trader performed a slight bow and left with his followers and their numerous goods, leaving the temporary camp. After the slave trader left, all the slaves that had been purchased were gathered in the square. They all stood with their heads lowered, uneasily awaiting their new master's speech. Right now, they couldn't do anything, they could only pray that their new owner was a bit kinder and wouldn't treat them too harshly. After a while, the young human who had bought this group of them stepped up onto a platform. He glanced at the crowd below and said loudly, "All right, everyone raise your heads." The crowd below slowly raised their heads. They stared forward with anxious faces. Fang Hao continued, "Firstly, you need to understand your status. You are all slaves and I have the right to decide your lives." At these words, panic was evident on everyone's faces. "But as long as you honestly work, I can guarantee that you'll have enough to eat and wear. Most importantly, nobody will attack you. You will be protected by the troops." The slaves below looked confused. They glanced at each other, not understanding their master's intentions. "So, human master, what work do we need to do to acquire these promises?" The one who spoke was the Deerman girl. She seemed to be a bit braver. "What's your name?" Fang Hao asked. "Edith, master." Edith spoke softly, and then lowered her head again. Fang Hao nodded and continued, "I will assign work according to your abilities. If you're smart and good at math, you can learn accounting. If you're good at farming, you'll be assigned to grow crops. Even if you feel you're quite ordinary, I'll establish factories in the future where you can work." At this, everyone opened their eyes wide. Learn accounting? Build factories, what is a factory? However, they also realized that it seemed their master's promise wasn't bad. At least they got what they wanted. They got protection and could survive the coming winter. And of course, they didn't believe Fang Hao was lying because there was no need to. To determine their fate, there was no need to resort to excuses like these. Seeing that no one below was speaking and there was no applause, Fang Hao didn't find it very amusing, so he just said, "All right, everyone follow me back to Orc City of Tasco." Chapter 755. After finishing speaking, he set off accompanied by the Minotaur guards. A large group of slaves marched towards Tasco City in a mighty procession. On the way, Fang Hao checked the attributes of the little deer person Adis. Adis, tertiary. Faction, Orc. Racial traits, living creatures, evasion. Skills, double shot, moonlight. Innate abilities, beginner archery mastery, beginner spell mastery. Living creatures, this type of troop can be healed, and is affected by morale, emotions, etc. Immune from bone manipulation technique and similar abilities. Double shot, when the first arrow hits the enemy, the second arrow can be fired rapidly. Moonlight, a spell that can stimulate the growth of plants that favor moonlight. Description: in the mystical forest, the Deerman tribe is undoubtedly a unique race. Sunshine and moonlight represent the difference between their males and females. The males draw power from the sun, while females prefer the night. The mismatched active hours make their mating exceptionally complex and difficult. Adis's level isn't high, but her racial abilities are relatively special. She can stimulate the growth of plants. And it seems gender-based. The males correspond to sunshine, meaning males can stimulate crops that benefit from sunlight, whereas females correspond to crops of the night. The terms sunshine and moonlight here ought to refer to plants that prefer the light and the shade. It's a pity that no males were bought, all the little deer are females. Adis. Fang Hao called out towards the back. In the back, Adis nervously but quickly walked forward. Deermen are quite fascinating. It makes you wonder how they clean themselves after going to the toilet. Master Adis came forward, looking a bit anxious. The antlers on Adis's head aren't big. They're just a thick, protruding bump. Does everyone in your tribe have the ability to stimulate plant growth? Fang Hao casts his gaze towards the other deermen looking on from behind. The deermen behind him, their faces full of worry, gaze back from a distance. It seems they're worried that Fang Hao will eat Adis or something. Yes, master. The males in our tribe can stimulate sun-loving crops. We females can stimulate shade-loving crops. Adis responded gently. What's considered a shade-loving plant? Fang Hao continued to inquire. Most shade-loving plants grow under forests, in canyons, or caves. For instance, mushrooms are fungi, and the half-moon grass we boil into soup, they're all shade-loving plants. Adis replied softly. Fang Hao nodded to show that he understood. These little deer are pretty suitable for growing alchemy herbs. At Crescent Heights, Fang Hao planned out a huge herbal field, but it wasn't very effective. He could consider letting them live there. After all, that land was largely vacant. Some races were reluctant to move to territories under Rolina's control. Right, you all usually come out at night. Fang Hao recalled what was in the description. Female deermen prefer to come out at night. Yes, master. Sunlight makes us feel weak and uncomfortable, whereas nighttime makes us feel comfortable. Adis continued to reply. This really is a unique race. Despite being the same race, the distinction between male and female is so clear. All right, I got it. You're in charge of your fellow tribesfolk. Just make sure they don't wander off on the journey. Yes, master. Adis was getting used to this form of address, no longer finding it as embarrassing. Chapter 756. An hour had passed. The group returned to the Tasco Orc City. The starving and dizzy slaves were led away to eat. Fang Hao also sought out Bronze Bull, instructed him to arrange his men to escort these slaves all the way to his place. Bronze Bull complied. The Tauren city is located east from Fang Hao's fortress. On the way to escort the slaves, some young Tauren would also be sent to learn about the thing called bookkeeping. It sounded very sophisticated. After all arrangements were made, Fang Hao did not stay longer. He activated the transmission screen directly and left for home along with Angia. He returned to his territory. Ira had already prepared dinner. The mates were all lackluster these days. Exhausted from rigorous training. Fortunately, the rejuvenation hot spring eased their fatigue. Otherwise, after such training, nobody could get out of bed the next day. After dinner, Dong Jiayu asked Fang Hao for a large quantity of bullets and detonators again. It's obvious that the battles were getting fiercer, the consumption of ammunition was also increasing. Fang Hao's side was continuously supporting the dwarf at the Eight Peaks Mountain factory, which was mass-producing ammunition. A large number of transmigrators were captured and made to work day and night, tirelessly manufacturing various implements. At this time, both sides were constantly depleting their resources in the competition. Before bedtime, Fang Hao comfortably soaked in the hot spring, enjoying the thermal mist dispelling his exhaustion. He rested his head on Ira's thigh. He watched Angia and Lori bathing Red General in a wooden tub on the side. The drenched and fluffy Red General seemed much thinner. Just like a drowned rat, it allowed the two to scrub and rub, all the while whimpering its protests. But after being slapped a few times by Angia, it stopped talking. Red General obediently stayed still. Ding! The Book of Lords gave out a sound indicating a private chat. It was a message from Lan Yang. Fang Hao, are you there? Lan Yang asked. Lan Yang was a bit of a character, and everyone liked her, always chatting away without seeming to do anything else all day, keeping her eyes glued to the channel 24/7. She could turn any conversation to her favor. Yes, what's the matter? Fang Hao replied. Lan Yang, boss, there were bandits running around in my area recently, can you lend me some rifles? I'll get my people to wipe them out. Lan Yang's area was within the Jinmasta city's jurisdiction. Jinmasta's management of its surroundings had always been lax. The Life-Taker bandits had their stronghold at the outskirts, but now with the weather cooling down, more and more bandits were becoming active within Lan Yang's territory. Since they were on the same side, Fang Hao was not afraid that loaning out firearms would pose a risk to him. Sure, how many do you need? After a while, Lan Yang replied, the enemy is numerous, could you spare me 200 pieces? Fang Hao immediately made 200 rifles and sent them over to Lan Yang through channel trading. He cautioned her, I've sent it to your trading channel, don't lose it. If it falls into the wrong hands, it could cost us our lives. The firepower was tremendous. After Fang Hao swallowed the divinity, his physical fitness increased drastically. But Lan Yang and her group were not as capable. If the rifles fell into the hands of the enemies, they could use them to kill her group. Understood, thanks boss. Oh, you didn't make any bullets for me. Right, I will make them for you now. Fang Hao made a large quantity of bullets and sent them over to her. Lan Yang, thanks a lot, boss. Love you. Before Fang Hao could exit the channel, Lan Yang sent another message. Boss, Li Rong wanted me to ask if you have blocked her. No, what happened? Fang Hao replied. Lan Yang, well, Li Rong said that she messaged you but you never replied. She wondered if you had blocked her. Fang Hao was helpless. He didn't block Li Rong, but he did set her to Do Not Disturb mode. She kept sending him explicit photos from time to time, all self-portraits in various poses. While returning home, twice he almost got caught by Angia and Rebecca. Since then, he set her to Do Not Disturb mode. She loved to send, so he kept her photos but without any prompt. This prevented him from thinking it was someone else reporting important matters each time. Now that Lan Yang had asked, he thought for a moment. He replied, "Oh, I messed up earlier. I've changed it now. If there's anything, I'll talk to her directly." Lan Yang, understood, boss. In the future, if there are any fierce beasts, don't kill them. Save them for me to practice my taming skills. All right, got it. Thanks, boss. Love you. He ended the chat with Lan Yang. Then Fang Hao opened the chat with Li Rong. Sure enough, a large batch of explicit photos appeared all at once. It was a good thing that he was lying on Ira's thigh, otherwise, she would have spotted the photos. Li Rong, you wanted to talk to me. As soon as Li Rong started speaking, her tone was full of complaint. Humph. I thought you, the big boss, had blocked me. If I hadn't asked Lan Yang, you probably would have forgotten about me by now. Fang Hao felt that she was acting like a disgruntled woman. Everything she said was filled with resentment. Fang Hao was equally blunt. You have some nerve to complain, look how many explicit photos you've sent me. If I hadn't muted it, the Book of Lords would have become your album. Li Rong, wow, I send you pictures out of goodwill, and you still complain. Do you know how many people are chasing after me? Chapter 757. Is this something you're interested in? Forget it, I have no time to talk about this right now. Why did you contact me? Don't tell me it's about taking new photos. Li Rong said, Humph, even if I take them, I won't show them to you anymore. Amanda is back, and I have finished my task here. When are you going to bring us over to your side? We need to settle the factory business. It had been more than half a month since their return from Silverwing City. On his side, the workers he had purchased had not arrived yet, so he could only wait until they came to bring the women over. Especially the gold-eating queen, Amanda. Keeping her in Li Rong's city was extremely dangerous. The workers haven't arrived here yet. Wait for my news. In a few days, I'll teleport you two over. Make sure you prepare everything you need beforehand, Fang Hao replied. All right, I'll also come over to your place to take a look, Li Rong continued. Fine. I won't chat with you anymore. I really do have new photos. Do you want to take a look? Set to Do Not Disturb for messages. 2 days later. Fang Hao got up early and started his morning routine. The rest of the maids also got up early and started their morning run and workout under Angia's leadership. Ong Jie, who doesn't usually get up early, is the first one up when it comes to training others. The maids in charge of cooking were snickering on the side, feeling glad about their less strenuous responsibility, as it spared them from the morning exercise. After breakfast, Fang Hao went straight to the tailoring workshop. With winter coming, people's requirements for clothing began to lean towards cold-resistant outfits. Upon reaching the tailoring area, he saw many tailors busily at work from a distance. Their tools had changed, from spinning wheels to leather processing frames, to handle the leather that had been bought. My lord, said the skeleton tailor, Soy, who quickly approached and bowed slightly. This tailor team leader he had promoted had always done a good job. Some things were done without Fang Hao having to instruct, as he was able to issue orders and get them done. Well, Soy, how's the production of winter clothes going? Fang Hao asked while walking. Soy followed closely behind, respectfully answered, Sir, everyone is working hard to produce. Okay, are the raw materials still sufficient? Leather is continually being sent over, and we have an adequate supply of flax and cotton. Everything is going smoothly. The leather came from various cities under his control. In particular, a large amount of beastskin was exchanged for weapons in Orc City to the east of Tasco. The beastskins were not worth much to the orcs, but they could be very useful to humans. Made into clothes, they could be sold to transmigrators and the local residents. This prevented many deaths from freezing, as Rebecca often mentioned. Well done, Fang Hao praised. He then went straight to a nearby storage room. Inside, neatly organized clothes were piled up. Fur warming robe, fur warming trousers. The yellow-brown fur clothes filled more than half of the warehouse, roughly estimated to be more than 2,000 pieces. These clothing pieces made of patched-together fur were not very attractive, but they were material-saving and cheap, which made them more affordable. They were targeted at the average citizens rather than nobles. Sir, these are the robes we made specifically for our people. The style and fabric are better, Soy reminded while pointing to a nearby warehouse. Inside the warehouse pushed open by Soy were main white robes. Cotton robes, cotton trousers and some cotton gloves. Sir, this kind of cotton fabric is more lightweight, comfortable and easy to wear. However, we don't have many reserves of cotton plants in our region, coupled with the high production difficulty, so the quantity of the final products is not much, Soy explained softly near Fang Hao. Cotton plants are advanced cotton. In the area, they had considerable cotton reserves, but not enough to be squandered. As a result, the quantity was naturally not large. How many can be produced? Soy calculated a bit and then answered, now we have more than 50 pieces. The raw materials in the warehouse should be enough to produce more than 200 pieces. Increase the quantity to 100 pieces, and then concentrate on producing the common fur clothes, Fang Hao said, putting back the robe he was holding. This wasn't a big problem. The fur could save more people, which was the most important thing. All right, sir. I'll speed up the buying of fur and add more staff for you. That would be excellent, sir. With more people, our efficiency can greatly improve. Let's go. We will recruit now. Upon reaching the tailoring workshop, Fang Hao immediately began recruitment, pushing the number of skeleton tailors up to 1,010. As a large group of tailors appeared, Soy quickly issued orders, assigning tasks to the newly added workers. Those who spin the threads, those who process the leather, and those who make the final products. The spot was bustling. After recruitment, Fang Hao had to build housing and some daily utensils for them. When Fang Hao returned to the Lord's mansion after finishing everything, it was already close to noon. All the maids were sitting at the door as if they lost their souls, leaning on each other and resting. Their wet hair clung to their foreheads and faces, and their clothes were in disarray. It was as if they had all been ravaged as a group. In the hall, Ira ordered the servants to bring up fruit wine from the cellar and distribute it among the people. Chapter 758. It was the cold fruit wine that gave them a breath. Fang Hao entered the hall and cast a glance towards Ira, who was resting on the side, looking somewhat disheveled. He said, "There's no need to rush, don't overwork yourself." Ira gave a slight smile and softly responded, "I'm not tired. Exercise is beneficial for the self. What will you all be training in the afternoon?" "Under Aseti's command, we are learning to ride horses and attack while riding." "It should be easier," Ira replied in a soft voice. Fang Hao nodded. Some orcs were not good at horse riding. Like Lori, who previously didn't know how to ride a horse. He rode horses by relying on his own strength and balance to forcefully stay atop. In the initial stages of racing against Angia, Lori would experience falls every day, each one leaving him with a battered face. Later, he gradually learned and became very good at riding. It's just that his body was so small that it looked smaller than a horse's neck. "All right, let's make sure everyone gets to eat something good in the next few days since we have abundant food." "Okay." After lunch, with Aseti leading, the maids left the city to practice horse riding. Meanwhile, the large number of slaves, previously purchased, arrived in the city escorted by Tauran soldiers. The city gates opened, ushering in a large number of rabbitmen and foxmen. Those at the front were being urged forward, and behind them on the carts, dozens of rabbitmen and foxmen lay unconscious. Seeing this scene, Fang Hao naturally understood the situation. They had been frightened unconscious by the nearby undead. This was due to Fang Hao relocating all the undead into the troop hiding cave, and the surrounding area was being patrolled by skeletons led by the Earth Spirit's daughter. "Lord, all have been brought here, just that some fainted from fear when they approached," a Tauran reported loudly. Fang Hao nodded, "All right, I got it." Then he glanced at the frightened-looking slaves below. He asked softly, "Rabbitmen and foxmen, do you all have a chief or leader?" "Soon." A male rabbitman from the Rabbitman clan and a female foxman stepped forward timidly. Fang Hao nodded, "All right, you two and Adis, come with me." Entering the hall, the three remained extremely cautious, silent, heads hung low, lost in their thoughts. Fang Hao pushed a huge sand table forward. He said, Foxman and Rabbitman, choose a plot of land around here to build your village." Hearing Fang Hao's words, both the Rabbitman and Foxman were taken aback. They had assumed they were purchased to be sacrificed to the undead. After all, such notions were common among the clans. But now, their new master was telling them to choose a plot for their village. Were they going to be nurtured only to be incrementally sacrificed? How horrifying! Master, please, have mercy on us. We're willing to undertake heavy labor for you. Please don't use us as offerings. The chief of the Rabbitman clan immediately fell to his knees and begged earnestly. As he started crying, the Foxman chief and the little deerman, Adis, followed suit, also falling to their knees, begging for mercy amidst loud sobs. The sounds from within the hall echoed outside. Swish, swish, swish. Everyone knelt down, weeping in unison. Fang Hao's eyelid twitched as he glared at the Rabbitman clan chief, who was the first to kneel. With such intelligence and courage, how did he become a chief? Silence! Fang Hao yelled. He then called for a Tauren and said, "Go outside the city and get Ira here." "Oh, all right lord," the Tauren responded and ran off at once. Not long after, a sweating Ira returned. She curiously looked at the Rabbitman and Foxman, bowing inside and outside, their eyes full of curiosity. Fang Hao said, "You explain to them, ask them to establish their villages nearby, and then I will assign them work." Ira nodded, "All right, master, leave it to me." Chapter 759. Ira has experience in this area. Being a rabbit man herself, she can easily convince these slaves. Previously, the maids purchased by Fang Hao were all managed by Ira. About 10 minutes later, Ira came back, smiling, saying, "Master, I've spoken with them, and they won't cry anymore." Fang Hao nodded, "You stay with me, these people are too timid." Ira smiled and did not speak. They returned to the hall. The Rabbitman, Foxman tribe and Adis were still standing in the hall. Fang Hao walked up to the sand table, pointed at the location of his city, and said, "This is my city, choose a location around it to build your village, I will help you." This time, the female fox tribe leader stood up. She stepped forward, first bowed in respect, and then quietly said, "Honorable master, we choose this area to establish our village." Fang Hao looked at the location. It was to the west of his city, roughly halfway between his city and Zhongbin city. This place was close to a river, making it a suitable area for habitation and farming. Moreover, their choice was quite thoughtful. Located on the west side of Fang Hao, even if the orcs caused problems, they couldn't affect this side. In case of danger, Fang Hao's main city would bear the brunt. Of course, Fang Hao didn't care about these. Regardless of the location, the roads were well built. It would be easy to transport materials later. "All right, since you've chosen, let's all go there together." After saying that, he led everyone under the protection of the Tauren guards. They moved toward the western outskirts of the city. They found a well-situated place. The terrain was flat, with a river and woodland, which suited the living habits of Foxman and Rabbitman. "How do you feel about this place?" Fang Hao looked at the Fox clan leader and Rabbit clan leader. "Thank you, master, we are very satisfied with this place." After discussing briefly, the Fox clan leader and Rabbit clan leader spoke up. "Well, then it's settled." Fang Hao opened the Book of Lords and began the construction. He built walls, and then lots of houses. The villages of Foxman and Rabbitman were different and not far apart. This was to avoid conflicts and disputes due to their distinctive cultures that might arise over time. Living separately, they could manage themselves. With all the slaves watching in disbelief, 2 villages sprang up, with tall walls and stone houses, even surpassing their former villages. The robust houses would keep out the bone-chilling cold in winter. "Thank you, master." They all knelt down again in unison. Fang Hao waved his hand to signal them to stand up and said, "All right, you all allocate the houses, and then for daily necessities, you can get them from the main city." "Yes, master." The 2 tribal leaders led their tribes into the village. They began to assign houses and work. Such a large village required a working schedule. After everything was assigned, 2 teams of workers followed Fang Hao back to the main city to collect the daily necessities. After everything was settled, the sky gradually darkened. After dinner, both Ira and Angia went to take a hot spring bath. Fang Hao sat in the hall. He Yui was sitting next to him, holding a sleeping baby. Fang Hao said, "This time, I brought back quite a few rabbitmen and foxmen. Choose some smart ones who can do accounting for training, so they can prove useful next year." Today, the slaves collectively cried outside of the Lord's mansion, which both Hui and others heard. If it weren't for seeing Fang Hao, she would have thought that something happened to Fang Hao. She responded with a soft smile, "All right, I will go pick some people tomorrow morning." "Okay, there are also some children over there, you bring all of them as well, give them a thorough education from the beginning, later I will see if there are teachers in any specific field, might as well start a school or something." Hui's smile turned into surprise. Fang Hao's planned targets were remarkable. He intended to establish a school. Now, knowledge is monopolized by the nobility, and the vast majority of commoners are illiterate and can hardly identify a few words. Those who can do arithmetic usually have someone at home who can teach them some basics. If Fang Hao establishes a school, he will be changing a prevailing rule of the current era. She was surprised and halted her action for a moment. Wah! The baby in her arms suddenly woke up and started crying. Hui immediately gently rocked the baby a few times, but without any effect. She could only say, "Fang Hao, I will go there tomorrow morning. The baby is probably hungry, so I will go feed him." Fang Hao nodded, "All right, go." After Hui left, Fang Hao immediately contacted Li Rong, telling her he would pick her and Amanda up the next day. He made all necessary preparations. After everything was arranged, Fang Hao got up and headed to the hot spring in the backyard. Early the next morning, Fang Hao took Hui and went to the rabbitman and foxman villages. In addition to the 135 children, 50 chosen young men were learning arithmetic and accounting. Fang Hao also deliberately set aside a special area on the outskirts of his territory. He built a separate building, made desks and chairs, and prepared paper. So far, the only teacher was Hui, with a rather simple curriculum. After helping with Hui's work, Fang Hao stood on the open ground in front of the Lord's mansion and released the teleportation curtain. As soon as the light curtain was formed, he saw Amanda and the bone dragon, who went through first. Chapter 760. Then comes Li Rong, with a handbag slung over her shoulder and obviously looking more dressed up than usual. She carried herself like a wealthy lady, looking around with a keen eye. She was taken aback by the sight of the stone path covered by a glass canopy and lined with lamps that ran down both sides of the street. Li Rong was completely stunned. For a moment, she thought she was back in the modern world. But the sight of a patrolling skeleton by the side of the road quickly reminded her that she was still in this world and had not returned to modern times. This realization only left her feeling even more amazed. Fang Hao's settlement had developed tremendously, and life here was hardly distinguishable from that of the modern world. If Fang Hao had only been an ordinary man in the modern world, then his life here was much better than it had been before. "Amanda, Li Rong, let's go inside and chat." The light screen shattered, and Fang Hao invited the two women inside the city lord's mansion for a chat. Fang Hao's hall was far grander than Li Rong's. In fact, it could be considered a small palace, hardly inferior to Olivia's residence. Li Rong's eyes widened, but she felt it was only appropriate. With street lamps outside, a bit of luxury inside was only to be expected. As the maids had all been sent away for collective training, the place seemed rather empty. After he gestured for the two women to sit down, Fang Hao went down to the basement and took out a chilled fruit wine for Li Rong. Amanda, being undead, naturally didn't need any of these. After finishing up, Fang Hao also sat down and asked softly, "Amanda, is everything going smoothly?" "Yes, I occasionally patrol around Silverwing City and they still aren't completely sure of my intention. I suppose by the time they realize, the battle on the dwarf's side will already be over," Amanda calmly replied from behind her mask. More than half a month had passed since Fang Hao returned from Silverwing City. For this entire duration, Amanda had been making sporadic appearances in Silverwing City, causing an uproar among their troops. Her elusive and almost undefendable attack style had given the city a great deal of trouble. The church had records of the gold-eating queen. When they found out that the ruler of the ancient kingdom, a dark gold undead hero, had resurfaced, the shock was nothing short of an undead army laying siege to Silverwing City. The ensuing chaos in Silverwing City quickly spread like a plague to all the other cities. This development effectively resulted in the postponement of their support plan for the dwarves. By the time they came to their senses, the dwarf territory would likely have fallen and a large portion would already have been annexed into Fang Hao's territory. Good, you've worked hard, Fang Hao thought for a moment before speaking again. Let Nelson show you around the city, familiarize yourself with the surroundings. Amanda responded as coolly as ever. She didn't say a word, simply giving a slight nod of her head. Fang Hao sent for Nelson. Nelson, who had always been immersed in his research and showed no interest in other affairs of the territory, respectfully undertook the task of being a guide. He led Amanda away for a tour around the city. By now, the main city had reached level 12, its scale on par with Lyss City. It should be noted that Lyss City's residential area is divided into commoners' and nobles' quarters, with 3 commercial streets. That's quite a large scale indeed. Compared to that, Fang Hao's territory was of the same size, but with a significantly smaller population. Even so, it was large enough for Amanda to wander about for quite a while. Once Amanda had left, only Fang Hao and Li Rong remained in the hall. Before taking her to visit the Rabbitman clan and Foxman tribe, he planned to discuss the packaging of cosmetics with her. He called on the bound spirit guardians standing guard outside the door once again to summon the goldsmith. The skeleton goldsmith Luke was brought in quickly. Walking alongside him was a wooden box which clinked and clanked as he moved. Having already accepted the fact of the undead, Li Rong was not too surprised to see Luke. Rather, she wondered what Fang Hao would need a skeleton studded with various tools for. "Good morning, Lord," Luke greeted, bowing in respect. "Yes, take a seat, Luke." Fang Hao then introduced, "Li Rong, this is Luke, a goldsmith of our territory, a craftsman with excellent skills. I think he may be able to bring some division in grades to our cosmetics." "A goldsmith? That's a strange kind of soldier," thought Li Rong as she curiously examined the skeleton across her, while Luke nodded in acknowledgement. "What do you mean?" Li Rong did not quite catch what Fang Hao was trying to say. "Luke, show the products you brought to City Lord Li Rong," instructed Fang Hao. Luke placed the wooden box he was holding on a table by Li Rong. Curiosity piqued, Li Rong took each item out. First came bottles made of glass. The craftsmanship was not as sophisticated as modern technologies. But these were rare items in this era. Only alchemists would use these bottles to store their potions. Part of the reason why alchemical potions are so expensive is because of these glass bottles. Li Rong instantly understood what Fang Hao was hinting at and felt a surge of joy. With glass bottles, she would be able to market liquid cosmetics. It made sense, if he could produce glass plates, he surely could make glass bottles too. Before her excitement had a chance to subside, Li Rong picked up the second item. It was a perfectly square wooden box with beautifully engraved metallic patterns on its surface. Li Rong's eyes widened as she lightly traced the metallic layer wrapped around it. She found to her surprise not only were the engravings exquisite but the edges also felt smooth and rounded when touched. Chapter 761. It is no less skillful than the modern machinery craft that preceded it. This is incredible, truly incredible. In this moment, she realized what a goldsmith does. She picked up one item after another. Besides the previous glass bottle, all the others are beautifully carved boxes of varying sizes. Some even feature intricate openwork carving, the metal as thin as paper, depicting exquisite designs. Every single item could be considered a piece of artwork. Li Rong inspected each one for a while. Only after suppressing her astonishment did she say softly, "Fang Hao, are you suggesting that these boxes could be used for cosmetics?" She understood Fang Hao's idea. But these beautifully carved boxes were works of art. Without considering the amount of effort expended by the goldsmith, such boxes should not be used for packaging but should be collected. My idea is to produce a set of exquisite ones and sell them to those nobles who are not short of cash. Those wealthy ladies are willing to spend money on such items. After Fang Hao finished, he lifted his wine glass and took a sip. Li Rong understood his meaning. Cosmetics are indeed the same in modern times, the raw materials and production do not require much money. The main expenditures are on packaging and brand promotion. As long as the packaging is exquisite and the publicity is good, it can be sold at a price that is dozens of times or even more than the cost of the product. Many consumers are actually quite clear about the profit margin involved. However, this approach still works in the market, and the products sell well. I think the approach is feasible, but, can you provide a continuous supply of this exquisite craftsmanship? Li Rong said. This is the crux of the issue. Fang Hao smiled and nodded, if there is a market, supply will not be a problem. Li Rong was somewhat taken aback. Could they mass-produce like machines? But Fang Hao had surprised her many times before, and since he said they could, she didn't feel there was any need to challenge him on it. So she nodded, as long as you say it's possible, then I have no objections. You can have 100 sets made for now. I'll take a look at how well the market accepts them, and we can discuss the price before selling them. Sure. Replied Fang Hao, nodding in agreement. The skeleton goldsmith possessed craftsmanship honed over centuries. The items they produced were indistinguishable from works of art. However, within their domain, the role they played was very limited. In the past, there were only 101 of them, helping tailors make noble attires, metal buttons or some ornaments. And the market for the jewelry produced by the goldsmiths hadn't been established yet. Luke was also quite anxious about this. Now that there was potential scope for development, he was more than willing. Especially after hearing Li Rong appreciating the works of his people as art pieces. Fang Hao turned to Luke and said, Luke, do as Li Rong suggested and make 100 sets for now. If it turns out well, we could increase the production quantity later. Luke stood up and responded respectfully, yes, my lord, we will do our utmost, we will not disappoint you or city lord Li Rong. Fang Hao smiled and nodded, yes, I believe in you. Luke bowed again, picked up the wooden box from earlier, and left the lord's mansion directly. After Luke left, Fang Hao also didn't forget the original purpose of Li Rong's visit today. The villages of the rabbit men and fox people had been set up, everything but Li Rong setting up the factory. Li Rong, the workers have already been prepared. There are around 600 of them. Whenever you're ready, you can start arranging them, Fang Hao softly said. That many people? Are they all villagers? What's their physical strength like? Li Rong took a sip of the fruit wine, feeling rather pleased. Most of them are young people. There are around 40 who are slightly older. You could have them in charge of cooking meals, Fang Hao explained. Li Rong showed a smile, okay, let's go check it out. Chapter 762. Apart from the Lord's mansion. With Li Rong, at least directly heading to the Rabbitman and Foxman villages to the west. It took about an hour to sprint there. And there they were, two extremely busy villages. Rabbitman and Foxman were busily coming in and out of their respective villages. Let's go, this is it. Fang Hao took a somewhat curious Li Rong into the Foxman village. Seeing Fang Hao approaching, all the Foxmen ceased their work and began to kneel in greeting. Enough, get back to your work. Bring me your clan leader and the Rabbitman clan leader. Fang Hao stopped the Foxman's gesture and ordered. Immediately, a Foxman ran off to inform the Foxman clan leader. In no time. In a room, the Foxman clan leader and Rabbitman clan leader arrived one after the other. After a slight bow, they sat cautiously on the side. Fang Hao looked at them and said, now that the village has been built, whether life is good or bad still depends on you. Thank you, master. Both hurriedly thanked him. Fang Hao did not beat around the bush and said, this is City Lord Li Rong, she will build a factory here, let the young people work in the factory, learn some skills, and she will pay you, which can improve village life. Although these were the slaves he had bought, he didn't want to turn them into mindless machines. He didn't want to see two lifeless villages. He hoped that the village could develop normally and more people could work in the factory. Li Rong would pay them salary. Just like how Li Rong hired the natives in her city. The Foxman clan leader, with a puzzled look, glanced at the Rabbitman clan leader with the same expression. Softly asked, Master, what is a factory? Fang Hao looked at Li Rong on the side. She thought for a moment and explained, it's a place specially built for work. You go there every day to work on time, and you'll be paid according to your workload. Oh, okay. The Foxman clan leader immediately agreed, not daring to ask more. As slaves, they knew what they should do and asking too many questions would only annoy the master. When they started working, they would naturally know what they should do. Actually, they were somewhat happy. Be it the Rabbitman or Foxman, they were just one-time deals. The money had been paid to the slave traders. They came over just to get enough to eat, and to live one more day. They knew they would definitely have to do manual labor. But now hearing that the master would pay wages for slaves' labor, wasn't this a great deal? Both of them were overjoyed. Fang Hao didn't care about the two joyous orc clan leaders below. He looked at Li Rong on the side and continued to ask, how do you plan to train them? And where will the factory be located? Li Rong had already planned this. She answered softly, tomorrow I'll arrange for people to come over for training. We can build the factory in either of the two villages as it would be convenient for them. Fang Hao nodded, indicating his understanding. He said to the two leaders below, all right, go back today, choose, well, start with 200 people. City Lord Li Rong will arrange for training, you all must study hard. Do you understand? Yes, Master, we will study hard. Both of them immediately assured loudly. Good, you go back now, and explain this clearly to your clansmen. They both bowed again, and then left. In the afternoon, Fang Hao took Li Rong to Pruel City and Lyss City. They met with Tai Vec and a jealous Rebecca, and Fang Hao introduced Li Rong to them. They also settled on a location for the shop in the city. Pruel City is only a level 5 city, although it has started expanding. But the financial strength of the rich people in the city is still limited. So the scale of the shop is just about a 2-story small building of around 100 square meters. If it's too large, the city's consumption power is limited. Lyss City, on the other hand, is a level 12 city. There are many old, wealthy families in the city, so its consumption power is much greater. Therefore, amongst the shops sold in the city Lord Mansion, Fang Hao picked a 3-story stone house with an area of over 200 square meters. It was located in the central area of the commercial street on the west side. The scale was not much lesser than the one Li Rong opened in Silver Wing City. Seeing how easily 2 shops were settled, the beaming Li Rong couldn't stop talking, not even pausing for a cigarette puff. She said she saw hope in life and intended to quit smoking to live a few years longer. Once the shop selection was done, the next step is remodeling. Here, remodeling does not require any plastering or the like, just cleaning and moving in the shelves and chairs. Tomorrow, I'll have people come over. They'll do some cleaning and give the shop assistants some training, said Li Rong, her voice filled with excitement. Her factory has been operating non-stop, and she had been secretly selling cosmetics to the ladies of Silver Wing City. But the sales volume was much lower compared to when a shop was open. There are also lots of goods stored up which she can't wait to sell in the new shops. Fang Hao also agreed, saying, okay, I'll pick you up tomorrow. Don't bring any of the original locals, so as not to leak information here. Li Rong also understood Fang Hao's worries and nodded in agreement. When everything was settled, Fang Hao took Li Rong back home. His place was really far from Li Rong's city. If not for teleportation, the round trip would take at least a month. Chapter 763. After sending off Li Rong, Fang Hao returned to his own quarters. Late into the night. 8 Peaks Mountain. Outside the final 2 fortresses, the 11th and 12th, of the dwarves. The boom of cannons were heard, the spreading smoke of gunpowder acted like dark clouds, blocking out all light from above. Outside a tent made of beastskin situated away from the battlefield. A voice called out from outside the tent. Sister Jiao, the new undead army has arrived. There are over 1 million in number according to Meatfist's count. The resting Dong Jiao within the tent got up. Yawning, she asked, what time is it? It's past 2 in the morning, replied the voice outside the tent. A sharp light flashed in Dong Jiao's eyes. Notify the troops down the line to prepare for the offensive. Yes. The figure outside answered before turning to leave. The undead had been launching harassment attacks for several days now. Skeletons didn't need rest, but dwarves did. Today was the day for the planned full-scale offensive. After donning her armor and grabbing her weapon, she stepped out of her tent. Outside, troops were moving around, and large numbers of undead soldiers were being mobilized. By this time, all the transmigrators and other living creature soldiers had finished resting and were ready for action. Dong Jiao nodded at them and took her position in the central command. Without delay, she coldly commanded, attack. Yes. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The flags signaling the attack were raised high. Members of the cavalry, each carrying their orders, scattered in all directions, crying out, attack. Boom, boom, boom. The rhythmic beating of drums permeated the air. A large grey glow enveloped all the undead again. In the marching infantry, giant trolls, carrying shields as large as doors, steadily advanced. At the center of the troops was the skeleton hero, Meatfist. He constantly shouted, watch the sky, raise your shields. Ching, ching, ching. Bullets bounced off the shields, creating a series of metallic clangs. Large numbers of skeletal bats, each carrying thunder tubes, also joined the battlefield from behind. They fearlessly soared towards the top of the fortress. The 11th fortress. The endless days of fighting had left all the dwarves exhausted. The undead seemed unending. They launched one wave of attacks after another. If they were just battling sleep deprivation, they might just be fatigued. But constantly being targeted mentally and physically was wearing them down. The dwarves were just mechanically reloading and firing their guns, cumbersomely moving like zombies. Bam! Suddenly, a dwarf carrying cannonballs stumbled and fell. The round cannonball dropped and rolled down the stairs with a clang, stopping at the base of the city wall. The others were terrified. They immediately scattered, hiding as far away as possible. The cannonball was not merely a lump of iron, it contained gunpowder. If it exploded, the casualty count would be unimaginable. However, the cannonball did not explode. Instead, it simply rolled to the side and came to a stop. The fallen dwarf had fallen asleep instantly after hitting the ground. The dwarf commander inspected the scene. He woke up the sleeping dwarf, saying, "Hang in there for a little longer. Once His Majesty Rune sends someone to relieve us, you can get a good night's sleep." The dwarf soldiers didn't speak, they just got back up and continued moving the cannonballs. Inside the command post. A dwarf, taller and sturdier than the rest, his flashy silver armor shining under the flickering light, and a lengthy flaming beard falling onto his chest, stood solemnly before a table. Laid out on the long table was a map. The dwarves had been in several skirmishes with the undead recently. Although they hadn't lost the city, the casualties suffered by the dwarves were immense. Both sides suffered losses in the sudden attacks and encounters in the wilderness. The undead, relentless and tireless like maggots on a decomposing corpse, held on stubbornly. They attacked ceaselessly, confining the dwarves to the city walls. Siddiq, an orange hero and one of the three great generals of the dwarves, was feeling incredibly frustrated having been pushed into such a predicament for the first time. There was so much pent-up anger, but there was nothing he could do about it. He had no choice but to take it all in. "General Siddiq, what's the situation at Grey Iron City?" a dwarf leader asked. All the soldiers in the city were holding back discontent. But they were all aware that with the current scale and intensity of the undead's attacks, if it wasn't for General Siddiq holding them off, the city would have fallen a long time ago. Not even mentioning the fact that they had held on for so long now. But, they had suffered severe losses too, their soldiers were all engaged in intense defense, with ammunition running dangerously low. They were afraid that they wouldn't be able to hold on for much longer. While looking at the map, Siddiq responded, "His Majesty Rune is likely waiting for support from the human clan. Alas." With these words, Siddiq let out a heavy sigh. Winter was fast approaching, the aid that the humans could provide would be limited. Even if the reinforcements managed to reach 8 Peaks Mountain, it was unclear when they would be able to provide assistance here. "If there are no reinforcements, what do we do?" a worried leader asked. Siddiq stared at the map and said coldly, "We haven't been completely without gains over this period. I've determined the position of the enemy's commander. I plan to take a team directly into their camp and kill their commander." Siddiq's hand pointed firmly at a marked location on the map. All eyes turned to the map. After a moment of contemplation, they all nodded approvingly. The attacking undead are just a bunch of unintelligent dead things. Chapter 764. If the commander were killed, these mindless skeletons would naturally lose their target. Then it would be easier to disperse them. This was their only chance of survival. "I agree with this plan." "I agree too." "Agree." One by one, the commanders expressed their agreement with the plan. Siddiq gave a nod, putting his helmet back on. He said coldly, "Gather all the giant elk cavaliers. 1 hour later, follow me to break out from the west gate and kill the enemy commander." "Yes, General." Swoosh. All the generals rose to their feet sharply, making the armor plates clang. Just as everyone was about to leave under orders. Dong, dong. The bell's alarm echoed through the entire fortress. All the dwarves in the hall frowned instinctively, a feeling of impending doom rising in their hearts. Usually, the ringing of the bell signals the undead's all-out attack. Before anyone could get out, a dwarf rushed in, rolling and crawling. He shouted, "The undead have launched an all-out attack. It's all skeletons." The undead had been attacking every day during this period. Given the dwarf's panic right now, the situation was likely even worse. Siddiq quickly said, put off the cavalry gathering. Everyone follow me to the city wall to assess the situation. Everyone walked out of the hall without hesitation and climbed the city wall. At this time, the city was already in chaos. Each squad leader was shouting orders, gunshots and rifles filled the fortress. Meanwhile, teams of people had already started to dismantle nearby houses. Stones and logs were starting to be moved onto the city wall. Siddiq led the people onto the city wall. Looking down, they all changed color. Giant skeleton trolls, each holding a shield as big as a door, raised over their heads. The shields, one after another, formed like a grey dome, shielding the skeletons below. Bullets bounced off the shields and scattered into the distance. Through the gaps in the shield, you could see the skeleton undead hidden beneath. Bullets and crossbow bolts no longer inflicted any harm. Only the ceaseless cannons could overturn the enemies under the shields. But the number of cannons was ultimately limited. Bring all the detonators over here. When they gather together, toss them down with me, Siddiq roared. A squad leader nearby immediately went to order. The dwarves began to carry the detonators. Just as everyone watched the undead closing in on the city with faces as pale as death. The dwarf appointed as a lookout shouted again. Watch out! Enemies approaching from the air. Everyone looked towards the sky. Only saw the thick smoke covering the moon and stars, entirely pitch black. The next moment, one bone dragon after another dashed out from the dense smoke. Bone dragon, Atta! The commander who had just started shouting suddenly stopped. The bone dragon swooped past, without any intentions to dive and attack. Just as everyone was confused. Skeleton bats began to drop from the bone dragon's body. It's skeleton bats! Shoot, quick! Shoot! Bullets and arrows fired towards the sky. In an instant, the bones of the bats fell like rain. Clang! Siddiq suddenly noticed a round object falling with the bat bones. Just right, it rolled towards the dwarf who had just walked out of the warehouse. Carrying boxes of detonators in his hands. Damn, shit! Siddiq cursed. Chapter 765. The dwarf transporting the dynamite had also noticed the object beneath his feet. He glanced down at it, then up at what he was holding in his hand. Did he drop it? But why is it smoking? Then, the sky started to crackle as the bodies of bats mixed with dynamite began to rain down like droplets. They scattered around the city like falling blossoms. The area of the dwarves' fortress was not large to begin with, but the number of dynamites had pretty much covered the whole place. Siddiq's face turned ashen and he immediately shouted, "Take cover, avoid the dynamite on the ground, hurry, everyone take cover." As he shouted, he was pushing several commanders who had been stunned. Everyone was immediately awakened. They started issuing orders to take cover and disperse. However, they didn't have much time to respond. The first dynamite smoking white fumes suddenly exploded. Boom! 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 The dynamites scattered throughout the city exploded one after another. The impregnable fortress had become a cage trapping them. It kept shaking and breaking apart in the explosion. On this pitch-black night, the fortress resembled a glowing box from the inside. It kept lighting up the night sky. With no enemies to blockade them, the undead began to launch their full-scale attack. A dense horde of undead began flocking together, crowding up and spreading upwards like mud. They trampled on their comrades and climbed higher. White skeletons draped the city's front wall. They poured over the wall, into the city. Swinging their weapons, they killed the trembling dwarves who crawled out of the ruins. Inside the fortress, the battle cries gradually became louder. The dwarves kept resisting. However, once the 4 gates inside the city had been opened, and more skeletons poured in, the outcome was sealed. Under a pile of rubble, Siddiq pushed a slab of stone off his body, leaning on his weapon, he stood up. He swayed his dizzy head and wiped the blood off his face. Beyond his sight were the ruins, big fires, and countless swarming undead soldiers. Siddiq shakily pulled out a blood-stained conch from his chest. He put the conch to his lips, trembling, he said, "I am Siddiq, Fortress number 11 has fallen, everyone has died in battle." After he finished, he tossed the conch aside. With blood-soaked hands, he stroked his beard. He gave the horde of undead before him a cold look, picked up his battle axe, and charged. At 4 in the morning, Fang Hao was suddenly awakened by the notification from the Book of Lords. He sat up, opened his private chat, and saw the message Dong Jiayu had sent. "Brother Hao, the 11th fortress has been taken. Now our troops are split into two groups. Black Sword is leading 50,000 skeletons to siege the 12th fortress while our main forces are advancing to attack the dwarves' main city, Grey Iron City. To speed up the progress, Dong Jiayu chose to split the troops. The location of the 12th fortress was not along the marching route. Therefore, a team was assigned to siege the 12th fortress. The main force of the army would continue to advance and attack the dwarves' main city. As for the 12th fortress, after cutting off the communication with the outside world, those inside would sooner or later surrender or starve to death in the city. With the weather turning cold, the planned schedule had been delayed. They withstand the cold to carry on, aiming to quickly seize Grey Iron City and end this war. Fang Hao examined the map and felt there were no issues. Furthermore, Dong Jiayu and the heroes who participated in the battle had a better understanding of the situation on the ground than him. Fang Hao responded, "Okay, let me know what supplies you need when the time comes, and I'll allocate them to you immediately." "Okay, there's no rush now, we can replenish once we spot Grey Iron City." "Alright. By the way, Brother Hao, how's the situation with the human reinforcements?" Dong Jiayu asked again. If human reinforcements began to interfere from the rear, they could disrupt the rhythm of the attack, potentially dragging the battle on for a long time. They might even get stuck fighting all through winter. They really didn't want to fight in the snow. I've tied them down for now, they won't intervene for the time being. But just in case, you should still deploy some sentries on the border between the two armies, in case anything unusual happens, Fang Hao pondered before responding. Understood. Okay. The two ended the chat. Fang Hao couldn't sleep anymore. He got up, put on his clothes and walked out of the room. At this time, the outside was still dark, but the nightstone street lamps illuminated the city. He stretched his body and started his morning exercise early. He loosened up his muscles and began to jog around the territory. When he passed the Blackstone training ground, he saw 5 young deermen fiddling with equipment in the ground. Their 4 legs hopping about were quite cute in a silly way. According to the deerman tribe, female deermen were nocturnal creatures. Now was exactly their active time. They were quite brave. Most slaves would be half scared to death by the sight of the patrol skeletons and the deep dark night. Yet, they seemed to be having a good time. Fang Hao watched them from a distance without disturbing them. He ran past them from a distance and continued his training. When he passed the central area, he saw another figure standing in the central square, looking up at the towering golden statue. The gold-eating queen, Amanda. What's going on? His castle was lively even at night, hey. Fang Hao slowed down, watching her from a distance. Chapter 766. Why is she gazing upon her statue? Visiting old memories, or self-admiration? It shouldn't be self-admiration. It was once mentioned in Amanda's description. Amanda only wrapped herself in gold when her skin became dry and shriveled, no longer beautiful as before. The golden statue of the queen, clearly bearing the image of her masked face, is unlikely an object of self-admiration. Was she reminiscing then? That doesn't seem right either. Being among the undead, akin to ascetics, all emotions become extremely indifferent after giving up one's physical form. It couldn't be this sentimental, could it? Fang Hao pondered for a while, then ran over, wiping his sweat and greeted, "Amanda, good morning." Amanda slowly turned around to look at the approaching Fang Hao. "What are you doing, Mr. Fang Hao?" Amanda asked in a soft voice. Morning workout, I'm exercising and saw you standing here." Fang Hao walked to her side. "Exercise? I remember, I used to love exercising. My private tutor always scolded me, saying I shouldn't be wielding weapons, as it would harm the image of the queen." Amanda paused slightly before continuing, "Obviously, he was wrong. A strong body is equally important." Well, as expected, she was reminiscing about the past. The description also mentioned Amanda's cause of death. She was poisoned. A hero, with a robust physique, might not be completely immune to poison but certainly won't succumb to it directly. It appears, Amanda seems to have her regrets. But now she's an undead, unable to change. Fang Hao thought for a while and said, "Being an undead is not so bad. You have an immortal life and plenty of time to pursue what you like." "Indeed? How do you know that the undead have preferences, and not just an empty and uninteresting existence with a soul?" Amanda retorted. Is that so? Nelson advised me like that. He wishes that I go through the transformation ceremony as soon as possible. Fang Hao promptly replied. Amanda looked at him curiously. Sir, do you have anything urgent to attend to? Not at all. Would you chat with me then? It's been a long time since I last talked to someone. Amanda's tone remained plain. Of course. Fang Hao agreed immediately. Perhaps it could help increase the loyalty. It is difficult to boost the loyalty of a dark gold hero. Amanda nodded, waved her hand. From the pendant around her neck, a stream of golden liquid flowed out, forming a table and 2 chairs in front of them. After Amanda gestured, both of them sat down on the chairs. Mr. Fang Hao, are you a transmigrator? Amanda asked. She learned some information about transmigrators from Li Rong. She was quite surprised by these people who were suddenly sent here. Yes, I was brought here out of the blue a few months ago. Fang Hao leaned back on the golden chair, saying quietly. Is this the power of God? Fang Hao hesitated. God, hey? Maybe. But the deity worshipped in their world seems to be quite different from the one here. Perhaps. Maybe some great entity, out of boredom, decided to add some fun and sent us over here. Fang Hao said. Amanda looked at him curiously. Joking about God made her, a queen, a bit tense. But very quickly, she relaxed. Continuing, she asked, do you miss your homeland? Homeland. At the utterance of this word, scenes of his modern hometown flashed through Fang Hao's mind. His parents, the old relocation district, and the elderly people who lined up every morning to get free eggs, but never bought anything. It's been a while, so long that the wooden board in front of the Lord's mansion marking the days was full of scratches. He was already getting used to the life here. He now had Ira and Angia. If he were to return now, he would have concerns. Yes, when I first got here, every day I kept myself busy. But at night, while asleep, dreams of past scenes kept appearing. Fang Hao's voice sank a little. Amanda was gently touching the gemstone at the top of her scepter. She silently listened. When Fang Hao finished speaking, Amanda started softly, I too, slept for a long time. In my dreams, I saw the Anglina beacon, seas of flowers blazing in flame. The fiery red flowers covered the hillsides, forming a fiery sea at first glance. I also saw the festival of the goddess of harvest, where boys get to give tokens of love to girls. Also, the trust of my subjects, and the eyes of children filled with anticipation. Undead's emotions aren't usually strong. But in Amanda's plain voice, he could sense her longing for the old kingdom and guilt towards her subjects. He remembered the first sentence in her description. Amanda, her wisdom and courage were as renowned as her sense of honor and justice. Her subjects held high expectations of her. Even after becoming an undead, they were still willing to trust her and let her continue ruling the kingdom. This trust had surpassed the repulsion of living creatures towards the undead. But it seems the ending was not good. Amanda ended up sealing herself in the underground palace due to severe injury. In the absence of the queen, the fate of Anglina kingdom is not hard to guess. What happened to the Anglina kingdom? Fang Hao followed her story and asked. Amanda shook her head, saying, I'm not sure. I had Li Rong check in Silverwing City. It seems the Anglina kingdom has become a part of history, with its territories divided among various races. Based on the old site of the kingdom, it is now known as the Great Cemetery of Odis. Chapter 767. Odis. This name, wasn't it the Skeleton King Odis? Even though I was the one to pay the price, it was due to Odis' recommendation that I was able to become a member of the Trade Alliance. Yes, names like Great Cemetery and Great Graveyard are common among the immortal kings. The ruler of this Great Cemetery of Odis is none other than the Skeleton King Odis. He was once one of my subordinates. I have no idea why he survived and also became the ruler of the former kingdom site. Amanda continued her introduction. At this point, Fang Hao understood that Amanda's sudden desire to chat wasn't spontaneous. She had something to say to him. Since the conversation had already reached this point, Fang Hao decided not to beat around the bush any longer. He asked curiously, what's on your mind? Amanda fell silent again before slowly speaking, I want to go home and take a look. If Odis is doing well, then I'll only be going to visit my homeland and see the old kingdom. If he has abandoned his former beliefs and is not a qualified ruler, I will reclaim my position, at which time I will need your help. This help was nothing more than military power and equipment. Amanda was powerful and also skilled in strategy. However, without troops, one could not regain control of the kingdom. That's where Fang Hao's support came in. Fang Hao thought about it. Amanda was a hero under his command, powerful and tactful, and her desire to reclaim her territory was beneficial for the land. Giving her the necessary support also meant expanding the territory. Of course, I will support your decision as long as you are willing, just like when we were in the underground palace, we support each other to survive in this world. Fang Hao showed a sincere smile. Gold-eating Queen Amanda, your loyalty is raised by 15 points, the current loyalty is 92 points. The system message immediately followed. Hearing that it had increased by 15 points, Fang Hao's sincere smile started to get a little strange. He quickly masked it, but it was hard to resist the urge to laugh out loud. Amanda did not notice the change in Fang Hao's expression, or perhaps she didn't think much of it if she did. She nodded in response, "All right, thank you. I am thinking about visiting the great cemetery of Odis in the next few days." Fang Hao thought for a moment and said, "We are not sure about Odis' attitude towards you. It is not wise to go there suddenly. How about this? I will establish trade with Odis through my shop in the near future to investigate the situation." Amanda naturally understood what Fang Hao was trying to convey. She nodded in agreement. Fang Hao continued to smile and said, "If you're bored with the territory, we are currently at war with the dwarves, you can go and have a look. I am sure with you joining us, victory will be much easier." "Sure, I want to see different places too." "Good. After returning from the dwarves' side, you can visit the Troll City in the Bloody Mountain Range and the Orc City. By the time you have finished touring, we should have definite news from the Great Grave as well." Fang Hao brought out the map and pointed out the locations as he spoke. Amanda looked closely at it, surprised and curious about the vastness of Fang Hao's territory. The two of them continued their chat, which did not further increase the loyalty. But at 92 points, it was already considered high. Now, even if Rolina were to come, Fang Hao wouldn't be scared anymore. With Amanda's abilities, plus a bunch of orange heroes, they could protect him easily. By the time Fang Hao left, the sky was already bright. On one side, a number of slogans were heard. Angia was leading a group of maids and they were running by with great vigor. As they passed, they didn't forget to flash smiles at Fang Hao. 7 a.m. After breakfast, Fang Hao received a private message from Li Rong. Once he confirmed that she was ready, he immediately activated the teleportation screen. Li Rong, leading 4 transmigrators, stepped out from the screen. All 4 of them were curious about their surroundings. But it was clear that they had prepared themselves mentally, and didn't react too much upon seeing the patrolling skeletons. Li Rong casually lit a cigarette, "Call him brother-in-law." The 4 of them bowed in unison, "Brother-in-law." Damn! Chapter 768. The 4 transmigrators all bowed in unison, lined up neatly. Fang Hao had met 2 of them before in Silver Wing City. Fang Hao glared at Li Rong, who seized the opportunity to throw him a flirtatious glance. Her expression seemed to say, "You know how things are." Fang Hao didn't bother to comment. "If you deny it right away. She even dares to say you don't recognize people after you've pulled up your pants. The more you argue with her, the more she thrives." "Doing real business?" he asked. "Li Rong, why are there only 4 people?" Li Rong exhales a smoke ring, "I only have 5 under my hands, and 1 needs to be left to take care of the home." "You don't trust the locals, what can I do? Can you manage?" "The craft method is not difficult, just repeat demonstrations a few times. They will stay in these 2 villages for the next few days, teaching them how to work while making tools," Li Rong answered. Fang Hao nodded, agreeing to that. Li Rong turned to the 4 men and said, "Those are all the slaves your brother-in-law bought. If you long for women, go back to Silver Wing City and find them yourself. If you mess around here, your brother-in-law will chop you off for me. He's killed quite a few transmigrators already." "Yes, Sister Li, and we are decent people," the 4 hurriedly explained. Fang Hao's notorious reputation was well known in the channel. Those who crossed him typically didn't end well. Li Rong glared at her 4 disciples, "I'm warning you, behave and teach them properly here." "Understood, we promise to fulfill our duties." Li Rong then turned to Fang Hao and said, "All right, I've briefed my men. Let's go to the orc village together." "Okay." Fang Hao nodded and had 4 horses brought over before departing with Aseti to the direction of Foxman village and Rabbitman village. They quickly arrived at the 2 villages after a swift ride. Li Rong assigned 2 people to each village and began to make a large number of buckets, basins, and other necessary tools. The 4 disciples were quite efficient. Knowing that this task would determine whether they could eat in the future, they quickly got to work. They started to teach others, introduce tools, and identify materials. They handled everything with great detail. At the entrance of the village, Li Rong looked at the village and said, "These people should be near my city. This distance is inconvenient." Fang Hao shook his head, "You might find it more convenient, but can you afford to feed so many people? Will Silver Wing City just stand by and watch? It's a bit troublesome here, but at least it's safe and stable." Li Rong nodded, conceding that he had a point. "Let's go. Next, we'll go to the shops in the other 2 cities. I'll stay in the city for the next few days to set up the shop and try to open for business as soon as possible." "All right, let's go." The 3 returned to the main city and activated the teleportation gate to transport Li Rong to Lyss city. She went to the newly purchased shop to begin renovations. Meanwhile, Fang Hao continued to take care of his own business. The next day, in Pruel City and Lyss City, street posters advertising Fairy Dream Tower had already been posted. Eye-catching headlines and specially commissioned posters were displayed in the most conspicuous places in the city center. During this season, although it was a little cold, they didn't have to worry about the rain ruining the posters. This also saved from the trouble of keeping an eye on them every day. Every day, a group gathered in front of the posters to take a look. Li Rong even arranged for staff to give the noble ladies in the city free product trials under the posters. While drawing on their faces, they continuously introduced the products. The relationships among the nobility were complex. The salesperson and the noble lady ended up talking about the noble and wealthy women in Silver Wing City. "Lady Polydzutter, we just went to the theater last month. Does she use your products too?" The salesperson's eyes lit up. "Of course, Lady Polydzutter is a regular customer of our Fairy Dream Tower. Others like Lady Olivia Doherty and Lady Rebecca, the city lord's wife, also use our products." "Really?" "Of course, our shop was previously only opened in Silver Wing City. It was only this year that we decided to open a shop here. Then I'll take a box." With the experience from Silver Wing City, the promotion of the 2 new shops went much more smoothly. They could declare outrightly that their products were the favorite of all noble ladies in Silver Wing City. And they were now the symbol of beauty for women in modern times. The locals had never seen such a promotion method before. And coupled with the extravagant praise, this quickly spread among the circles of noble ladies and misses in the city. The shop hasn't even opened yet, but many have already started to purchase the product under the poster. This delighted Li Rong, who even noticed a potential for becoming the richest person around. No, the richest would definitely be Fang Hao. Being the second richest wasn't too bad either. Several days later, early in the morning, Dong Jiayu, stifling a yawn, stepped out of the beastskin tent. As soon as she stepped outside, she felt something cold on her neck. When she touched it, it had already turned into water. Looking up, she found that the sky was filled with falling snowflakes. "It's snowing, winter has come," Dong Jiayu murmured, exhaling white breath. She looked around. At the center of the beastskin tent, the surrounding area was filled with the neatly arranged undead army. Snowflakes landed on the undead's heads and shoulders, accumulating slowly without melting. At the end of her city line was a city built between 2 steep mountains. The steel-grey city wall, towering towers, and the densely packed cannon mouths on the walls. Chapter 769. Grey Iron City. 8 Peaks Mountain, the main city of the Dwarf Kingdom. Built into the mountain, the city walls are cast from molten iron, formidable and impregnable. The only approach for an attack is straight ahead, which is also the best defended and fiercely fortified spot. The dwarves are already prepared. Therefore, Dong Jiayu and his team did not launch a direct attack at the first opportunity. Instead, they gathered their forces outside the city, beginning to regroup and rest. The dwarves on their side began to hastily repair their artillery, preparing for the final battle. Meanwhile, an endless line of undead skeletons joined their ranks from the rear. The waiting army grew larger and larger. The formation of the battle line rapidly expanded backward. "Jiayu sister, how should we fight this final battle?" A voice sounded, and several transmigrators walked towards them. All of them had changed from their thin clothes to the fur-warming robe and fur-warming trousers distributed by Fang Hao. At a glance, they resembled hunters going up the mountain to hunt in a TV drama. The style was not bad, mainly because they were really warm. Even without particularly cold weather, they were sweating in those clothes, and needed to change out of them once they entered their tents. Dong Jiayu responded, "No rush. We are reaching the final step. Our army will keep growing. Those dwarves should be the ones feeling the pressure." The others nodded, feeling that made sense. "Jiayu, the walls of Grey Iron City are much higher than typical city walls. It will be more difficult for the undead to pile up and climb up. We should consider making some siege equipment," Deng Bin commented. "Yes, I've considered that. The dwarves are currently creating siege equipment that we can utilize," Dong Jiayu said as she took off the tent. "Let's discuss it inside." 13 transmigrators entered the tent. They each took a seat around the tent. "I have a suggestion. If the frontal and skyward assaults are challenging, can we consider digging tunnels? Remember the demon rat attack? Some demon rats can dig tunnels right up to the front gate of the Lord's mansion," Yang Xiaolan proposed creatively. Immediately after she finished, someone refuted, "Considering the hardness of the ground at this time and the possibility that the mountain range might be underneath, think about how long it would take to manually dig all the way. Should we find a special way, such as enlisting some warcraft that are good at digging tunnels? Should we ask Brother Fang Hao? He might have a solution." Everyone turned their eyes to Dong Jiayu. Dong Jiayu distributed some breakfast she had prepared, before continuing, "I heard from Belarga that when the dwarves built their city walls, they considered this possibility. The underground part of the wall is also very deep, and it is even stronger. Damn, those dwarves are too cunning. No wonder they are not tall, they're all brains." "Exactly." The transmigrators, failing to come up with any siege strategies, began to hurl personal insults out of embarrassment. From accusing the dwarves of being crafty, to mocking their short stature. A string of words, all maligning the dwarves based on their physical characteristics. Thankfully, Belarga did not attend this meeting, or he would have been so angry he might have plucked out all his beard. In the midst of the messy discussion inside the tent, a guard's report was heard from outside the tent. "My lord, there's news from the front that the Grey Iron City has sent dwarves to negotiate." All the people in the tent were stunned and subsequently looked at Dong Jiayu unanimously. The great battle was about to begin, yet the dwarves suddenly sent someone over. Dong Jiayu guessed the purpose of the dwarves and said, "Let the dwarves come over. And call Meat Fist and Spencer over too, to attend the dwarves meeting together." She was also worried that the dwarves would suddenly launch an attack. Having 2 orange heroes present would not only show the value they placed on the heroes but also serve as her protection. "Oh, all right, my lord." The guard quickly retreated and passed on the message. Dong Jiayu looked at the few transmigrators and said, "You guys can go back to your work for now, I will notify you if there are any updates." "Understood." The group got up and left the tent. Before long, Spencer and Meat Fist entered the tent. On the dwarf's side, as the formation of the undead army was so large, they hadn't arrived yet. It must have taken them quite a bit of time to walk here. The 3 of them discussed the purpose of the dwarves' visit in the tent. After waiting for almost an hour, a guard's report came from outside the tent. "Lord, the dwarves have arrived." Dong Jiayu immediately returned to her main seat and said solemnly, "Let them in." Swish! Footsteps sounded outside the door, the tent was pulled open, and 3 dwarves appeared in front of them. The leading dwarf had a grey-white beard and wore a high-quality cotton coat. He strode in confidently. However, when they saw that the person sitting in the main seat was a young human girl, all 3 dwarves frowned. They looked at the undead heroes standing on both sides like bodyguards. Their eyes showed some confusion and incomprehension. They had forgotten what they had rehearsed and stood in place. "Gentlemen, please take a seat." Dong Jiayu was the first to speak. Hearing her voice, the 3 dwarves came to their senses, exchanged glances with each other, and sat down on the seats to the side. Dong Jiayu continued, "The great battle is about to begin, do you gentlemen have any business here?" The leading dwarf with the grey beard slammed his hand on the table and said loudly, "There have never been any grievances between 8 Peaks Mountain and you. You seized our city and killed our people. What is your intention?" Chapter 770. The questioning tone instantly tensed up the atmosphere inside the tent. The 3 of them initially thought they were here for negotiations, but they seemed to be here to blame instead. Seeing the raging dwarfs, Dong Jiao couldn't help but laugh, saying, dwarfs attacking the transmigrator cities, stealing winter supplies, enslaving transmigrants, do you guys think you've been very discreet, and no one else knows? The grey-bearded dwarf frowned. He didn't expect her to bring up this issue. At first, they didn't realize that the war between the undead and the dwarfs was led by the transmigrants. Seeing that the grey-beard dwarf didn't speak, the red-beard dwarf behind him stepped in to speak. What transmigrant cities? We've no idea. Even if there's a misunderstanding between us, it can be peacefully resolved. Aren't you afraid of being surrounded and attacked by all living forces by colluding with the undead? Well, the conversation is turning towards the undead again. Dong Jiao frowned as well. She didn't want to argue with them about who's right or wrong in this matter. If they don't attack the dwarfs would march eastward and capture the cities of the transmigrants one by one. Therefore, she naturally has no mental burden. As for the undead troops, they are a secret faction. Extremely handy. They don't need to eat or sleep, and they don't worry about morale. You guys, what's the use of saying all these? Without any hesitation, Dong Jiao stated, if you three are here to discuss who is right or wrong, then please go back and wait for your death. My army will take over Grey Iron City. You. The three of them stood up in anger at her words. But they sat back down, looking at the coldness in Dong Jiao's eyes. Their task here was not complete, and they're not leaving just yet. Taking a deep breath, the grey-bearded dwarf said, I'm presenting King Rune's proposal for a truce. Everything said before merely serves as a build-up to discussing this truce. But Dong Jiao and the other transmigrants didn't feel much affinity with such matters. Who's right or wrong doesn't matter, all that matters is who wins the fight. Then speak quickly about your proposal, Dong Jiao urged. After glancing at his two companions behind him, the grey-bearded dwarf then spoke, this war is unnecessary for both of us. The loss of resources and troops will make it harder for us to survive the winter. As if he's a different person, the tone of the grey-bearded dwarf suddenly softened. No, my soldiers don't need to eat or drink. It's the perfect time for war in winter. Dong Jiao replied. The grey-bearded dwarf paused, even if the undead don't need food, you and your human followers still need it. The loss of troops could create an opportunity for other forces, potentially endangering your interests. No, I have a conversion field for the undead. The loss of troops pretty much equals the transformation of corpses. Dong Jiao replied. Still thinking, the grey-bearded dwarf continued, even if you are not worried about food or troop strength, the cost of war is still substantial. The financial burden of a war can ruin a prosperous country, you should consider it. No, as a transmigrator, I don't have any savings. Capturing your city, however, has given me a lot of good stuff, Dong Jiao continued. Damn it! The three dwarfs cursed in their hearts. So, you just came to fight us barehanded, unafraid because you have nothing to lose? Yet, she's pushed us to this state. We've been pressed to the gates of Grey Iron City. Looking at the three dwarfs' faces, which looked like they'd swallowed shit, Dong Jiao continued, just get to the point. What did Rune tell you to say? Just say it. Chapter 771. If it had been Dong Jiao's own army, they would never choose to go to war in the winter. Just as the greybeard dwarf said, the winter environment is too harsh. Food, marching, temperature, various factors make the war much more difficult. But now, she is leading Fang Hao's army. She didn't have to worry about the soldiers or the equipment, she could just ask for it. The only requirement Fang Hao gave her was to take Grey Iron City, end the war with the dwarves, and rescue the transmigrators who had been captured. So, the difficulties brought up by the dwarves. In her view, they were problems for the enemy. Greybeard didn't mention them, she wouldn't even think of them. However, Dong Jiao didn't feel like wasting time arguing with him. She asked them to state their purpose directly. Left with no choice, the dwarves could only say, King Rune has said that as long as you agree to withdraw your troops, leave the territory of 8 Peaks Mountain and no longer attack the dwarves, Grey Iron City will give you certain compensation. What can you give me? Dong Jiao asked directly. 2 million gold coins, 5,000 royal apparatuses, 5,000 precious silk cloths, and the right to trade with the dwarves. You can buy dwarven-made firearms at a very low price, said Greybeard loudly. He seemed to feel that the price he offered was already astronomical. His voice was even louder than usual. Dong Jiao curiously looked at the three dwarves. Even though she didn't care about the soldiers or equipment, by now, millions of pieces of equipment had been transported here, which also exceeded 2 million gold coins, right? They took such a small amount of money and wanted her to withdraw her troops. Did they think she was begging for food? It's not that the dwarves didn't know they were offering too little. The dwarves didn't have any enhancements. They produced and made them bit by bit. This war had been going on and they had been using up their financial resources too. They couldn't afford more. Dong Jiao didn't feel like arguing with them either, waving her hand, "All right, you all go back. Let Rune keep his money." "You?" Greybeard's eyes widened, then he continued, "Then what do you want? Say it, and I'll talk to King Rune. There's still room for negotiation. There's no need to push things to the worst. Anything can be negotiated." "Yes." Dong Jiao carefully looked at Greybeard, then slowly said, "Will surrendering and opening the city gate do?" Bang! "You're dreaming. You guys are just dreaming." Greybeard cursed. Dong Jiao didn't care, "Then go back. The war will start in a couple of days. You should eat whatever you should eat now. Who knows, you might not get a chance afterward." Seeing that negotiations were not going well, the dwarves became angry. One of them stroked his beard and said in a cold voice, "Humph, do you really think we are afraid of these skeleton frames? Grey Iron City is the strongest fortress, standing for hundreds of years, and no power has ever broken through it. You guys, probably still not good enough. So mighty, what are you doing here? Bragging about your 2 million gold coins?" Dong Jiao retorted. Dong Jiao was also in a channel, arguing with a group of people. Sarcastic and ironic, at this age group's common skill. There was no reason she should fear the indigenous old man. "I was just giving you some leeway. In my opinion, the best choice is to take the money and withdraw your troops." Greybeard glared at her, continuing. "Oh, go and convince your King Rune. You." Greybeard was nearly coughing up blood. Dong Jiao snorted coldly, "Guards, escort them out. If they don't leave the camp within an hour, they will be executed on the spot." "Yes, let's go, old man." The guard outside the door pulled the curtain aside and peered at the dwarves. The dwarves were ashen-faced. They gave Dong Jiao a fierce glare before turning and walking out of the tent. The snowflakes outside the tent were getting bigger. The endless undead army sent a chill down the dwarves' hearts. In the tent, although they were tough-mouthed, they didn't have much confidence inside. So many undead, they just couldn't kill them all. Where did they all come from? Just as the three of them were about to take a closer look at the layout here, a voice came from behind. "Long time no see, Mr. Neve." The three dwarves turned their heads and saw a transmigrator woman in a leather jacket walk over with several people. Greybeard Neve recognized her as Deng Bin. He had traded with her several times and even sold some firearms to other transmigrators through her. He hadn't expected her to be alive. "Miss Deng Bin, seeing you alive is indeed a surprise," Neve sneered. Deng Bin also gave a smile, saying, "What's so surprising about that? The undead attacked the dwarves because I persuaded them to." "Surprised?" The faces of the three dwarves changed dramatically. Neve roared, "Damn it, it was you, you bitch, you're not going to die well, your soul will suffer torment forever." Faced with Neve's curses, Deng Bin didn't care at all. She stepped aside and said to her subordinates, "What are you waiting for? Beat them up." Crash! The several human soldiers behind her rushed forward and started beating the three terrified dwarves. Not far away, some guards were reporting what was happening here. From afar, they heard Dong Jiao's voice in the tent, "Don't kill the messenger." Deng Bin heard it and said, "Get to it, did you guys not have breakfast?" The militiamen switched from fists and kicks to wooden sticks, thrashing the three dwarves. For a moment, cries pierced the whole area. Chapter 772. Night fell. The dinner was a steaming hot pot. Moreover, the room was well insulated. Fang Hao and Anjia, among others, were all sweating from the heat as they ate. Hui, who was also having dinner with them, ate a plain hot pot alone because her child was still breastfeeding. She was pathetically sniffing the aroma from our side and eating her bland meat slices. As they ate, the dining room was enveloped in a mist. After dinner, everyone dispersed, and the warmth in the room gradually dissipated slowly. After glancing at the reports from the various secondary cities, Fang Hao prepared to go and soak in the hot springs before retiring to his room. At that moment, a maid reported from outside the door. "Master, Sister Little White and the maids are back." Fang Hao raised his head, "Let them in." The door opened, and Little White, the fox girl, led in a few maids along with the landlady, Winnie, striding in. They had been left behind in Pruel and Lyss City to run the stores. But with the large number of residents unemployed in winter, labor was cheap. So, Fang Hao changed his strategy. The waitstaff were all hired from the city, and the cost of housing was even eliminated. However, the ingredients for the store's food still needed their own people to transport. So Little White and Winnie naturally came back to the palace. "Master!" The ladies all greeted in unison, homesickness and joy shining in their moist eyes. "You've worked hard, you can just stay here from now on," said Fang Hao gently. They all showed happy expressions, as if running the store had been a hardship. "Yes, master." "Well, you should rest. Don't catch a cold in the cold weather when you go to the hot springs," Fang Hao continued to instruct. "Yes, master." A few rabbit maids retired. But Little White and Winnie didn't move. "Winnie, aren't you going back to your tavern?" Fang Hao looked at Winnie. In Pruel City, Winnie owned her own tavern. Even though she had been assigned to Lyss City by Fang Hao, her own store was still open. She could have gone back to her own place, but she chose to follow Little White all the way back here. Winnie glanced sneakily at Little White and softly said, "I've handed over the tavern to someone else. It's not the right time for me to go back now, so I came over with Little White." "Sir, there should still be rooms available, right?" In the beginning, Winnie, the owner of the tavern, gave Fang Hao the impression of being an opportunistic and voluptuous tavern madam. Her tavern was not big, but business was very good. Now that Winnie had come back from Lyss City, she gave Fang Hao the appearance of a well-developed, brilliantly dressed young woman. She seemed a little more noble than before. Moreover, Winnie wasn't foolish. Now it's winter, and although she had her own business and had made a good sum of money managing Fang Hao's business in Lyss City, she knew firsthand how harsh the winters here could be, having experienced more than 20 years of them. The streets were filled with beggars and few people came to the tavern for a drink. Given the chance, she naturally wanted to spend the winter here with Fang Hao, where the food was good, the accommodation comfortable, and hot springs were available to enjoy. Of course, she also knew that Fang Hao wouldn't refuse her. After all, their relationship was pretty good. She treated Fang Hao like a younger brother, and Fang Hao had once saved her life. "What's the big deal, there isn't much to do this winter. You can just stay here," Fang Hao responded with a smile. "Thank you, sir." Winnie immediately revealed a brilliant smile. At this moment, Little White also spoke up, "Then I'll show Sister Winnie to a new room." "Fine. If you need anything, you can just fetch it from the warehouse." "Okay." The two of them answered and left the Lord's Hall. After seeing the two women off, Fang Hao went straight up to the 4th floor. The study was on the 4th floor, with full wardrobes and various collected crafts, famous paintings and sculptures against the wall. Overall, his study really did give off the feel of a noble's room. Entering the study, he heard a sound of silver bell-like laughter from outside the window. Looking back through the window into the courtyard, he saw Ira and others chatting and playing comfortably in hot spring. Ira and Angia huddled together, one white and one black, presenting a dramatic visual contrast. This world was unlike any other. Rejuvenation hot spring was still steaming even under such weather. Mist surrounded it. Moreover, a few solar stone slabs placed around it emitted constant heat. Fang Hao sat down at the table, placing the wine glass in his hand in front of him. He opened the Book of Lords and discussed the plan for the next few days with Dong Jiayu. They agreed on the time of a general attack. Time ticked away. Then, there was a knock on the door from outside the room. "Come in." Little White, wearing a long dress, walked in looking adorable. Her two fluffy little ears twitched a bit. "Master." Have you arranged Winnie's room?" Fang Hao looked at her. She had clearly put an effort into her appearance. "Yes, it's arranged." Little White walked over to the window, specifically looking outside. Seeing Ira and others chatting in the hot spring, her eyes curved into a smile. "You don't go out during this time. Hui is teaching the townsfolk about accounting in the city. You can learn from her. We'll talk about it when the weather gets warmer," Fang Hao said softly. Little White smiled gently, sat down on the side and said, "Yes, Master, I will follow your instructions." Chapter 773. Next, Fang Hao watched Dong Jiayu's report from the side. Occasionally, he would send her some weapons and equipment. Meanwhile, Little White stayed quietly on the side, refilling the water cup with fruit wine from time to time. She was like a petite maid. Once Fang Hao closed the Book of Lords, Little White knew that he had finished his work. Hearing the laughter downstairs, she squinted slightly. She stumbled and accidentally knocked over the water cup on the table. "Oh no, I've spilled the wine," Little White exclaimed. She quickly looked around but didn't find any cloth to clean up the mess. So, she leaned over the table and extended her soft, delicate tongue to lick the wine flowing down the tabletop. Her cute face blushed, her eyes seductive. Her round bottom perked up, hidden by her not-so-long skirt that just covered her upper thighs, giving peeks, glimpses and hints. Her soft, fair thighs and round, upright figure filled the room with a special atmosphere. Although Fang Hao was feeling a bit sleepy, seeing this scene stirred his heartbeat. This vixen! If anyone knew how to seduce people, it would be Little White. She appeared innocent and cute, but her scheming mind was complex. Her soft little tongue kept licking, her eyes darting to Fang Hao from time to time. Her skirt swayed slightly. Fang Hao walked straight behind her, lifting up her dangling skirt. Little White's eyes squinted, her body unconsciously swaying. The next day, Ira arranged for someone to clean a room in the Lord's mansion for Little White. And Little White, in return, accompanied Ira closely, always flattering her. A white fox was actually a rare species among the Foxman tribe. Plus, Little White was young and looked delicate and cute. That was why Ira arranged for her to accompany Fang Hao. Now that Little White had come back, she and Angia returned to the room to see them together. So, she arranged a room for her today. Of course, Little White was overjoyed. She had been serving Ira happily since morning, taking over some of Ira's work. After breakfast, some went for patrol training, others went to learn from Hui. Everyone went about their own business. 3 days later, at the Undead's camp on 8 Peaks Mountain. As the weather grew colder and colder, stepping outside the tent would feel like being sliced by a bone-chilling wind on the face. Dong Jiayu stood in front of the tent, gazing as far as she could see. Yang Xiaolan, standing next to her, pulled down her cotton hat and curiously asked, "Jiayu, what are you looking at? When did Fang Hao say we would attack? It's getting colder by the day." The usually fashionable Xiaolan had lost her interest in dressing up. All she cared about now was keeping warm, which was much more important than looking pretty. They had received a large amount of weapons and ammunition from Fang Hao last night, planning to attack today, but for some unknown reason, the plan was suddenly postponed. Dong Jiayu had been looking around, seemingly waiting for someone. Fang Hao said the hero would bring reinforcements, but where are they? Dong Jiayu replied while scanning the surroundings. At that moment, at the end of her line of sight, there suddenly appeared a caravan approaching them. "They're here," Dong Jiayu exclaimed. The others also turned to look in the direction. They saw a golden caravan, as if made of pure gold, approaching them. Dazzling to the eye. Chapter 774. The golden carriage, inlaid with gemstones, slowly came to a halt before the group. The carriage door slowly opened and out stepped a woman clad in gold armor and a golden mask. With the support of the bound spirit guardians by her side, she descended from the carriage at a leisurely pace. Holy shit, she's got an intimidating presence. She's a dark gold hero. Yeah, a dark gold hero clad in gold. Isn't that a bit too much? Is she one of Fang Hao's heroes too? It's possible she's the leader of some native power, here to aid us. As Amanda disembarked from the carriage, the transmigrants by the sidelines began to discuss amongst themselves in surprise. You couldn't really blame them. The spectacle this party presented was simply extraordinary. The entire crew was aglow with gold, noticeable from a fair distance away, blinding to the eye. Moreover, the wagons behind them seemed to be loaded with all types of gold articles, being hauled carriage after carriage. Weren't they here as reinforcements? Why didn't they bring more soldiers and instead haul all these gold items? Are they planning to buy Grey Iron City? Amanda paid the transmigrants no mind as she entered the beastskin tent. She sat down and calmly stated, "Fang Hao has sent me to assist you in taking Grey Iron City." Dong Jiayu knitted her brows. While the dark gold hero was indeed impressive, in a large-scale war like this, 1 or 2 heroes could not make much of a difference. Coughing slightly, Dong Jiayu asked, "Commander Amanda, are those the only soldiers you brought?" Amanda nodded. "Yes." Okay, and what type of troops are you skilled at commanding?" Dong Jiayu continued to probe. Amanda paused for a moment, surveying the crowd, before saying, "Grey Iron City has only one wall to assault, so just stick with your current plan, and let me assist at the rear." The rest of the heroes turned their attention to Dong Jiayu. They were all unsure about this unexpected woman and her intentions. Dong Jiayu pondered for a moment and decided to shrug it off. This dark gold hero was just a late addition before the battle. Even if she didn't turn out to be of much use, it wouldn't matter. Rearranging the troops because of her would delay the campaign by 2 to 3 days. After thinking it through, Dong Jiayu slammed her palm on the table and ordered, "Very well, prepare the troops according to our plan. We attack in 1 hour." "Yes." Everyone acknowledged and swiftly headed out. Amanda also took her leave, guiding her golden carriages toward the front lines. 1 hour later, the banners fluttered, and orders were swiftly dispatched. Simultaneously, the sound of war drums rang out. The thumping of each drum engulfed the undead army, uniting them into a thunderous roar. "Vanguard!" Meat Fist glanced back at the flag waved by the troops, and shouted loudly, "Shields up!" Whoosh! 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 The mass of skeleton trolls lifted their massive shields high over their heads, creating a ripple of grey metallic domes. It spread outward, like a meticulously paved floor. "Advance!" At the command, the undead began moving in unison, boldly striding forward. Meanwhile, Amanda in the rear, sitting in her carriage, raised her scepter and pointed it forward. From behind her, a river of golden fluid flowed forth from the carriage, rapidly forming a protective layer of gold armor around each skeleton's body. Underneath the shielded dome was a sea of shimmering gold. Meat Fist glanced back at the carriages, said nothing, and simply signaled the command for the skeleton warriors to begin their attack. Beneath the cover of the shields, even the smaller skeletons began to inch forward with the army. Dong Jiayu sat in the center, oblivious to the skeletons up front, all of which had been transformed into gilded warriors. All around her, troops were being mobilized. The ground was constantly trembling, and the only sound that reached her ears was that of bone clattering against armor. Atop Grey Iron City. Inside the giant observation tower, a dwarf soldier, sheltering from the cold wind within the battlements, began to grumble. "Damn this weather and damn these undead! Once we engage, I'll use their skulls as chamber pots." His companion, also bitterly cold, chatters, Don't say that, once we actually engage, who knows who will be using whose skull for a chamber pot? What are you suggesting? That Grey Iron City can't hold off these undead?" "I didn't say that, I just heard from one of my relatives that King Rune has sent ministers to negotiate with the undead, intending to settle this war peacefully, but the undead refused." This statement, the meaning behind it was not lost on the complaining dwarf. If their side were as confident as the king seemed when he made his speech, they wouldn't have sent diplomats to broker a settlement. Is that true? Does it even matter if it's true? When the battle starts, just don't charge forward like an idiot, in case we decide to retreat and you don't even realize it. Damn those undead! The grumbling dwarf looked towards the undead in the distance and spat. As soon as he withdrew his gaze, he felt that something was off. He took another look at the scene beyond the city wall, and immediately froze in shock. Like a soulless body, he muttered, "Sound the alarm." What? His partner's teeth chattered together. Sound the alarm. The undead are attacking. Chapter 775. The companion suddenly stood up, looking terrified at what lay beneath him. In the biting cold wind, an iron-grey barrier appeared in the distance. It was inching closer, bit by bit. "Damn it!" the dwarf soldier cursed and forcefully struck the warning bell. Dong dong dong! The loud chimes echoed swiftly, accompanied by the ringing of other bells that blanketed the entire Grey Iron City. Within the city walls, groups of dwarfs sprang into swift action. Horse-drawn and oxen-drawn carts, hauling loads of defensive equipment, moved along the city walls. The walls of Grey Iron City were constructed to be wider than roads. Various kinds of arrows, cannonballs, boulders, explosives, and incendiary grenades were distributed. Muskets, devices, various calibers of gun barrels, and cannon mouths protruded from the city walls, aiming forwards. Essentially, they had brought out all of their reserves. From afar, one could see the dense undead army approaching. The dwarves swallowed nervously, their faces ashen. Even though the distance was still considerable, the wait was agonizing, like awaiting death. Thud after thud. At that moment, there was the distant sound of marching footsteps. With the crown on his head and clad in golden red armor, Rune, along with a group of ministers, ascended the city walls. Ignoring the saluting soldiers, he stared at the approaching army. Half a year. He had been in his position for only half a year. If the undead broke into Grey Iron City today, he would be the shortest reigning king of Eight Peaks Mountain and the king under whose rule Eight Peaks Mountain was destroyed. What are the humans saying? Rune asked. Behind him, a minister promptly replied, they are still using the same excuse about the resurrection of the gold-eating queen. She intercepted the reinforcements near Silverwing City, and they are currently fighting against her. Are they making up excuses? Rune's voice deepened. Possibly, but the gold-eating queen can control the power of gold. If she really shows up near Silverwing City, it is possible that the Hall of Justice and the Church would take it seriously, a minister explained at one side. Rune nodded, continuing, what do the orcs and the Trade Alliance say? Another minister came forward and said, Tasco City has changed hands, they say that they don't care about these matters. As for the Trade Alliance, they deny having any record of these undead forces, suggesting they are not part of the alliance and thus, they cannot intervene. Rune's hand, which was holding his staff, tightened a bit more. By now, he knew that the undead were led by a young transmigrator girl. But how could this large-scale army not have joined the Trade Alliance? It must be that the Trade Alliance was unwilling to interfere and had simply made up an excuse to evade responsibility. Rune took a deep breath and asked, any news from the trolls of the Bloody Mountain Range? None, the messenger who went to request aid has not returned. Damn it! Rune cursed inwardly. Just what was happening? All the forces surrounding Eight Peaks Mountain are in trouble. If even one person was willing to assist them, there would be hope for ultimate victory if they defended the city with all their might. However, there's not even a single reinforcement now. Spying the undead soldiers getting closer, he immediately ordered, Frederick, you are to take command of the defense. Frederick was a veteran general of Eight Peaks Mountain. He had previously led the dwarf army into battle against the Blood Clan. Yes, Your Majesty, Frederick stepped forward and responded in a deep voice. Rune nodded, lowering his voice, we cannot let Eight Peaks Mountain be lost under our watch. We must hold. Frederick, gazing at the endless army beyond the city, had a somewhat distracted look in his eyes. When the old king had fallen ill, he should have handed over his position and retired. If they lost the city now, both he and Rune would be the criminals of Eight Peaks Mountain. Yes, Your Majesty, Frederick said. Rune and a few ministers descended the city walls. Frederick began to loudly issue commands. Time slowly ticked by. The undead army was getting closer to Grey Iron City. The whistling of the wind was now replaced by the reverberating sound of the army's march. The undead soldiers looked like a limitless tide. They continued to advance without interruption, closer and clearer with each passing moment. The undead hidden beneath the iron-grey shields could be seen, as could the skeleton soldiers laboriously pushing siege towers, with iron swords hanging on their waists. Everything was starting to come into focus. The dwarves on the city walls began to tremble uncontrollably. The number of their enemies was just too great. Even if they believed in Rune's words, could they really defend against so many undead? What if they ran out of ammunition? Or if they simply couldn't hold out from the start? Load the cannons! A booming voice issued the command. The dwarves, whose senses had been somewhat blurred, instantly sobered up. They looked at the undead that were nearly within range. They began to load the artillery shells into the cannons. The round shells were stuffed into the muzzles, and the angle adjusted, the cannons pointing at a distance. There was no need for aiming. As long as the range was adequate, any shot fired downward could hit the undead. In Grey Iron City, everyone was silently doing their jobs, no one speaking a word. An aura of grave silence pervaded. Suddenly, under everyone's watchful eyes, the undead moved into the range of the cannons. Fire the cannons! Boom boom boom! A burst of gunfire erupted atop the city walls. The barrels spewed out tongues of fire, and in the blink of an eye, the shells fell amid the ranks of the undead. With each resounding crash, dirt and rocks exploded into the air, the undead soldiers being torn apart and sent flying, reduced to scattered skeletal remains.